Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. No matter how enraged they became, no matter how wildly they attacked, they couldn't even touch Riku. Most of their attacks, thanks to Riku's manipulation of their senses, ended up hitting their own allies, nearly fracturing their relationships. If they hadn't known it was Riku's doing, they probably would have started fighting each other for real. The frustration was enough to make them cough up blood. This wasn't even a fight, it was them being single-handedly toyed with. See? I knew it would end like this. Zeralist sighed. That ability of his is way too broken. I'm sure it has a limit, but I still haven't found it. Ugh. I actually feel a little sorry for Vard and the others. The other white dragons couldn't help but groan. Thankfully, they hadn't been stupid enough to pick a fight with that human, otherwise, they'd be getting the same treatment. Only now did they understand why Zeralist had submitted to a human. He really did have the power. And according to Zeralist, this same human had gone from barely holding his own against her, to toying with 4 Dragonia at once in just a week. That growth rate was absurd. No wonder Zeralist thought he had limitless potential. The other white dragons found themselves wholeheartedly agreeing. Master's amazing, he managed to toy with those dumb dragons so easily. I wonder what other trump cards he's hiding. I can't wait to see more, Drumroll muttered, eyes sparkling with curiosity. By the way, Shui, did you already know things would turn out this way? Drumroll turned to Shui, who had remained unusually calm throughout the whole battle. To be honest, she'd been a little worried at first. Fighting 4 Dragonia at once was no joke. Riku won't lose, Shui replied with absolute certainty. Oh, I guess I need to reflect on my lack of faith in Master. Drumroll grinned. Human. If you've got any guts, fight us head on. This doesn't count for anything. Overhead, Vard's frustration reached its breaking point as he roared furiously. No one knew what he'd been through in this kind of battle, he'd never experienced in his life, and it was humiliating enough to make him want to die. Chapter 41. So, you really are just a dumb dragon. Riku shook his head at Vard's words. Who would give up their own advantage just to fight you head-on where they're weaker? Besides, if we're talking about power, I'm stronger than you anyway. You. Hearing this, Vard and the other 3 black dragons stiffened. They wanted to argue, but couldn't. In the very first round, Riku had completely dominated Vard, grinding him into the ground. Enough, Vard. How much longer are you going to make a scene? Riku is our guest. Lord Regenlif hasn't made a decision yet, this isn't your place to interfere. Zeralist suddenly flew over, shouting angrily at Vard. At her words, Vard and the other black dragons froze, their pupils wavering before they reluctantly decided to withdraw. They already lost enough face. Now that even Zeralist and the other dragons were intervening, making a bigger mess would only bring more shame. Boring. Watching the 4 black dragons slink away, Riku shrugged, deactivated the 7th gate, and muttered with a smirk. The Dragonia's time contraction ability is just too broken, otherwise, he'd have crippled them for real, not just destroyed their pride. Sorry about that. Those guys are too immature, Zeralist said to Riku. Riku nodded calmly. It's fine. I'll keep looking around. Let me know when Lord Regenlif gets back. With that, Riku took off into the sky, heading toward Drumroll. Looks like he's still mad. Those idiots really are a handful, Zeralist sighed with a wry smile. Master, you were so cool. Watching you trash those big, dumb dragons was so satisfying. If I had more power right now, I'd want to try it myself, Drumroll said, clearly entertained. Riku just rolled his eyes. You? That would just be suicide. Even for me, juggling all those senses at once with Kyoka Suigetsu in the 7th gate is exhausting. You're strong, but not the Drumroll you'll become 6,000 years from now. Right now, you'd get thrashed by 1, let alone 4. By the way, Drumroll, do you want to make a contract? If you do, your life will be completely under my control, but you'll grow stronger together with me. I won't force you, think it through, Riku said, his tone serious. A contract? I've already sworn loyalty as your servant, Master. There's no need to consider my feelings on this. Still, I appreciate you asking, it makes me happy, Jibril replied with a gentle smile. As long as it's your wish, I'll do anything you ask. Good. Riku smiled in satisfaction. Then let's begin. He pulled out a mysterious, rune-inscribed card from his storage. This is a contract card, Jibril. Drip your blood on it and swear loyalty, that's all you need to do, Riku said softly. Contract card? Master, you really do have all kinds of strange things, Jibril said, her curiosity piqued as she examined the white card. Without hesitation, she bit her finger and let a drop of blood fall onto the card. I, Jibril, swear to serve my master, Riku Dola, for all eternity, in life and death, she declared solemnly. In an instant, the card lit up, and Jibril's figure appeared on it. A mysterious bond formed between Riku and Jibril. Teleportation. Not bad, Riku said, feeling the new ability within himself. Shambhala was good, but compared to teleport, it was slow, especially in high-level battles where speed is everything. Wow, Master. My power's recovering so fast I'll be back to full strength in less than a day, Jibril exclaimed in surprise. That's one of the perks, Riku explained, smiling. The contract card had 5 slots, but given Jibril's potential, it wasn't a waste. Riku, I want a contract too. Shui suddenly grabbed Riku's sleeve, gazing up at him. Eh? Riku blinked, touching his face. He couldn't help but think Shui was a little jealous. Or was he just imagining it? Shui, this requires blood. It won't work for you, Riku said, a bit helpless. Okay. Shui fell silent for a few seconds, then looked away in disappointment. Don't worry, our contract doesn't need this. I already promised you, Riku reassured her, patting Shui on the head. Shui nodded, her mood visibly improving. Alright, let's keep treasure hunting, Riku grinned. A diamond chest. This would be his first time opening one. He couldn't wait to see what kind of overpowered loot was inside. Riku, with the ever-curious Jibril and Shui following, headed to where the diamond chest was supposed to be. But when they arrived, Riku frowned. The chest was nowhere to be seen. System, what's going on? He asked in his mind. Spatial anomaly, spatial? You mean? The diamond chest is in a different dimension? Riku asked, voice low. Correct, no wonder. This is going to be a headache, Riku muttered. Even with teleport, crossing dimensional barriers was another story. Riku, what's wrong? Shui asked, noticing his frustration. Shui, does your database have any means to cross dimensions? Riku asked, patting her head. No, Shui replied after checking her systems. Master, is the treasure you want in a different dimension? Jibril asked curiously. Speaking of dimensional travel, Lord Regenlif is an expert at it, always vanishing into other planes. That's why it's so hard to find her. Regenlif. Hearing this, Riku's eyes suddenly lit up. With the wise dragon's abilities, this problem can definitely be solved easily. Looks like I have one more thing to take care of. Riku narrowed his eyes slightly, murmuring to himself. After that, Riku basically played tourist, taking Jibril and Shui sightseeing among the mountains as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Even though they were in the heart of Dragonia's territory, there was not a hint of tension. Several hours later, the sky suddenly cracked like a mirror, and a white dragon many times larger than any other Dragonia emerged, exuding a domineering presence. An overwhelming aura, deep and unfathomable as the sea, blanketed the world. The sheer pressure suppressed everything around. That's the wise dragon. Riku muttered, his face solemn. This level of strength was completely over the top. Shui, for you all to have killed Regenlif and his 7 subordinate dragons back then. You really were incredible. Riku sighed from the bottom of his heart. It wasn't until he stood before a true top-tier being like Regenlif that Riku realized just how different this level was. Without using his trump cards, there was no way he could beat him at his current stage. At his words, Shui looked conflicted, finally nodding slightly. That battle, though they'd killed Regenlif, his final destruction roar under Shui's command, had accidentally destroyed Riku's home. Yeah, the Ex Machina's battle with Regenlif shook the entire world. That's why no race dares to provoke the Ex Machina anymore. Among us, the head of the Ex Machina is ranked the same as the Dragonia. LV.5. Super rare specimen. Jibril praised, starry-eyed. Alright, let's head over, Riku said, the corners of his mouth turning up in a faint smile. Both Jibril and Shui nodded in agreement. Lord Regenlif, you've finally returned. Zeralis and the other white dragons were the first to fly over, greeting him with respect. Where are Vard and the others? Regenlif swept the area with a majestic gaze, then asked with mild curiosity. They picked a fight with Riku, got soundly beaten, and couldn't save face, so they left. Zorlus answered, feeling rather awkward. Oh? Riku, that human, how interesting. Reginlift's tone was full of intrigue. A human who could defeat 4 Dragonia at once. It was nearly unthinkable. Wise Dragon Reginlift, a pleasure. I am Riku Dola. At this moment, Riku and his group appeared in the sky, meeting Reginlift's enormous gaze head-on, his manner neither arrogant nor servile. Seeing this, the white dragons watching from below silently admired him. To face the wise dragon so calmly, unshaken, self-assured, and respectful. No wonder he dared to aim for slaying the god of war. Oh? What an interesting human. Reginlift's interest only grew as he regarded Riku. This human was presenting himself as an equal, perhaps even more than that, as if it were natural. And he'd managed to bring both a Fleeble and an Ex Machina under his command? Reginlift glanced at Jibril and Shui, who stood quietly behind Riku, deep in thought. Human, no, Riku. You're here to talk alliance, yes. Tell me, how confident are you in your chances of killing Artosh? Reginlift asked, meaningfully. 100%. Riku's eyes sharpened, he answered without hesitation. Ha 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 ha, that's bold. But I like it. The word stunned Zorlus and the other dragons. Even Reginlift was briefly caught off guard before bursting into hearty laughter. He'd expected Riku to say something like I'll do my best, not this. But this was right, such ambition needed matching confidence. Saying I'll do my best would have been an insult. But, Riku, before that, fight me first. Based on your performance, I'll give you my answer. One warning, you'd better fight as if your life depends on it, or you really will die. Reginlift's laughter faded, his dragon eyes narrowing to razor-sharp slits. Under that gaze, even Riku felt as if a mountain was pressing down on him. Behind him, Jibril even trembled a little, not out of fear, but pure instinct. At her peak, she might have withstood it, but now, drained of power, her body sensed the crisis that came from standing before Reginlift. Still, Riku held himself upright, his gaze unwavering. If I don't have the resolve for this, I might as well keep leading my people in running and hiding, Riku replied calmly. Fascinating. Very well, show me what you can do. Reginlift rumbled, his voice like thunder. The surrounding air churned as if a storm had just blown in. Even standing before just that wind, Riku nearly lost his footing. But his eyes remained steady, his expression tense but calm. 7th gate, Gate of Shock. Open. Taking a deep breath, Riku opened the 7th gate without hesitation, pushing his power to its peak. At the same time, he drew his Zanpakuto. No doubt, this would be the toughest battle he'd ever fought. But if he couldn't even get past Reginlift, then taking on the god of war was a pipe dream. Kyoka Suigetsu. Riku leveled his sword, voice low. Boom. In the next moment, Riku shattered the air beneath his feet, his whole body shooting at Reginlift like a meteor. Roar. Reginlift instantly unleashed a dragon breath, swallowing Riku in a torrent of power, tearing a ragged gash through space, like a curtain of darkness. Not only that, Reginlift's massive body tensed, and he spat another breath to his right. In that instant, the real Riku was forced out of hiding, barely managing to teleport away in time. A moment later, a second dragon breath carved through that space, making the sky itself shake. Thankfully, they were fighting in the sky. If this kind of power had struck the ground, everything for kilometers around would have been obliterated. Not a bad ability, but against someone far stronger than yourself, its effects are limited, Reginlift, the wise dragon, commented, staring at Riku. Haha, that's true. Riku just shrugged nonchalantly upon hearing this. Reginlift was vastly stronger than him. Using Kyoka Suigetsu to manipulate her senses wasn't nearly as effective and consumed an enormous amount of energy. It was quickly seen through. But I'm not going to lose that easily. Riku's gaze turned sharp again, and he vanished, using teleport to appear above Reginlift's head. Thud. Riku summoned all his strength and punched Reginlift on the head. But at the moment of impact, Reginlift's white dragon scales shimmered and completely blocked the punch. She wasn't hurt in the slightest. So tough. Riku's expression changed, and he gripped his Zanpakuto, slashing down hard. Clang. Even putting his full strength into the swing, all Riku managed was to leave a sword mark on the white scales. He couldn't even break through Reginlift's defense. That level of power just won't cut it, Reginlift said calmly, her massive dragon claw reaching into what looked like a spatial wormhole. A moment later, a spatial portal opened above Riku, and Reginlift's huge claw came crashing down with terrifying speed and force. At the same time, Riku felt the surrounding space seal off. He couldn't use teleport. Her space manipulation surpasses mine? Feeling the impending danger, Riku's face tensed, and he tried to dash out at his highest speed. However, the dragon claw was even faster than Riku had anticipated. If this landed, he'd be lucky to survive. Hyrutora. Gritting his teeth, Riku roared and threw a punch that blasted the air apart. A massive blue tiger materialized, roaring as it crashed into the descending claw. Boom. There was a deafening explosion. The dragon claw was finally stopped, torn up by the blue tiger, its scales shattered and blood spraying. Seizing the moment, Riku broke free, retreating a kilometer away and breathing heavily, staring at Reginlif with a grave expression. So strong. The difference in power was on another level. Oh? You actually managed to injure me. That last move wasn't bad, Reginlif said, the spatial wormhole disappearing and her claw quickly healing as she casually rewound time. But that's all, it was decent. You're still far from defeating me. Hey, I suppose so. It's my first time facing an opponent of your caliber, I'm a little out of my depth, Riku said with a wry smile and a shake of his head. Elsewhere, Zurlis and the other dragons silently observed, sighing to themselves. It was clear Riku was still far from being a match for Reginlif. Still, Zurlis recalled that Riku had admitted he was holding back some trump cards. Maybe. The other dragons were simpler, looking on fanatically at Reginlif, convinced she could not lose. That human is actually fighting against Reginlif? He's just seeking death. At that moment, Vard and the other 4 black dragons returned. Seeing the distant battle, their faces were filled with glee. With Reginlif making a move, the human would surely be thoroughly crushed, just the thought delighted them. The only ones who remained calm were Jibril and Shui. Even though they hadn't known Riku for long, they could see by his expression that he wouldn't lose. Is this all you've got, human? If so, I'm a little disappointed, Reginlif said, shaking her head. For a human, this level was enough to shock most of the world, but it was still far from enough to challenge the god of war. If that's how you see it, then I guess I'll have to get serious, Riku said with a small smile, but his tone was dead serious. Now that, I look forward to, Reginlif replied with great interest. 8 gates formation. 8th gate, gate of death, open. Under everyone's gaze, veins bulged on Riku's forehead, and a wild surge of energy erupted from his body, shaking heaven and earth. As the force grew more violent, Riku let out a deafening roar. Instantly, wind and clouds swirled. Violent energy exploded from Riku's body, sweeping the entire world, scattering every trace of dust. His skin turned scorched red, as if burned at high temperature, with bluish-white patterns like energy channels appearing along his body. Riku was now enveloped in deep red energy flames, his power soaring to its absolute peak. This power. It's way too strong. Zurlis and the other white dragons stared at Riku in shock, exclaiming. By Zurlis's senses, Riku's strength had expanded dozens of times. He could wipe her out instantly now. As expected of Master. Incredible, just incredible. Jibril gazed at Riku in a frenzy of obsession. Riku. Shui's eyes also showed waves of shock and worry. This state was anything but normal. Impossible. How could he possibly be this strong? On the other side, Vard and the 4 black dragons froze in midair, their huge eyes wide in disbelief, shuddering at the sight of Riku. This shattered everything they thought they knew. Fascinating, truly fascinating, he's actually become this powerful? But this state of yours, you're gambling your life away. What amazing resolve, Reginlif stared at Riku, full of awe. Ra-ah. Riku didn't respond to Reginlif. Instead, he let out a furious roar, the sound vibrating the sky and causing Zurlis and the others to shudder from the terrifying pressure. At that moment, Riku vanished not by teleportation, but by sheer speed alone. Bang! In the next instant, he appeared in front of Reginlif, his punch shattering space itself. It splintered like glass, unable to withstand the force. Reginlif's pupils contracted violently, she almost couldn't react, and even when she did, there was no way to dodge. All she could do was focus her energy on defense. But a violent cracking sound echoed out as Riku's fist shattered her barrier like glass and smashed directly into her. Thud. Splurt. A thunderous crash shook the sky. Reginlif spewed blood, her gigantic form sent flying. Reginlif's head was left with a massive dent, a huge fist mark caving in the skull, shattered dragon scales scattered everywhere, and her appearance was utterly wretched. Her entire body was sent flying uncontrollably, crashing down on the earth over 1,000,000 meters away like a falling meteor. In an instant, the ground roared and shook, terrifying fissures and craters spreading out as if hit by an earthquake of catastrophic magnitude. Reginlif-sama. Witnessing this, all the dragons gasped in horror. Their wise dragon, their master, was knocked flying by a single blow without any chance to resist. This strength was just too terrifying. Boom. A new explosion rang out as Riku vanished from where he stood, reappearing above the massive crater. He came down like a meteor himself, wreathed in deep red flames, and hurled another punch down, tearing the heavens and earth as a white shockwave plummeted toward the battered Reginlif. Roar! Dizzy from the blow, Reginlif finally recovered and lifted her head to the sky, roaring as terrifying energy surged in her maw. A pillar of light burst forth, colliding head-on with Riku's white fist energy. Boom! The two attacks collided, an earth-shaking, sky-shattering boom resounding as if the very world was trembling and on the verge of collapse. The ground beneath Reginlif's feet caved in even further under the unbearable power, opening up more and more. In the end, Riku's white fist force overwhelmed Reginlif's breath attack and crashed into her again. Although the blow was greatly weakened, Reginlif still managed to defend herself this time. However, Riku instantly used teleport to appear above Reginlif and brought his leg crashing down with explosive force. Splurt. Despite distorting space and fortifying herself with energy shields, Reginlif still couldn't block it. The space shattered, the shields shattered, and everything in the way was torn apart. She took another devastating blow, slammed deep into the ground, blood gushing as a horrific wound split open on her head. Crack. A shocking sound echoed as one of Reginlif's dragon horns was snapped off by Riku's kick. Explode. Reginlif roared, using the dragonkind's word of power. Instantly, everything around her erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. Even Zerulus and the other dragons, watching from a million meters away, had to join forces to defend themselves against the shockwave. If not, even their nest would have been obliterated by the aftershocks. But Reginlif's word of power did not kill Riku. It only managed to blast him away. Taking the chance, Reginlif rewound time to heal her wounds and took to the sky again, staring at Riku in the distance, her expression deadly serious. Too strong, she'd nearly been finished off. After that, the battle between human and dragon shook the world. Waves of destruction surged outward from the center, leaving Zerulus and the rest in utter shock. Reginlif, the one and only Dragon Lord, their leader, was being thoroughly overpowered in direct combat by Riku. So this was his trump card? It was truly astonishing. Zerulus's eyes flickered as her heart roiled with shock. Still, with such explosive power, the price had to be immense. How long could Riku possibly keep this up? She let out a silent sigh. As expected of Master, he's actually overpowering Reginlif. This is the kind of person I should serve, one with infinite potential. Just when you think you've seen his limits, he explodes with even greater strength. Jibral's eyes sparkled with excitement and obsession. Shui said nothing, silently watching the battlefield, countless data streams flickering in her eyes. At that moment, Riku suddenly exploded with even more power, tearing open space itself and firing a barrage of terrifying shockwaves to pin down Reginlif. 5 shockwaves crushed the surrounding space, restraining Reginlif from 5 directions, making it almost impossible for her to move. Not only that, but with space itself shattering, chaotic spatial currents raged, Reginlif couldn't even slip into a different dimension. Hey! You really do have infinite potential, Reginlif's eyes flashed with admiration and resignation. But I won't lose here. Her gaze sharpened once again, power erupting from her body as she shook the bindings off. Energy built in her jaws, more terrifying than ever before. Night Dragon. Riku roared, unleashing every last ounce of strength as scarlet flames around him condensed into a massive Eastern dragon. Stomping through space, he launched himself at Reginlif. Everything in his path, air, space, everything, was annihilated. Reginlif, too, let out a furious, piercing roar. Boom. A raging beam of energy erupted from her jaws, shattering the bindings and shooting straight toward Riku. This was the Dragonia's ultimate technique. Collapse Howl. Collapse Howl was a self-sacrificing strike for the dragons. Using it usually meant death, even those who survived would lose most of their strength and would not recover for a long time. The consequences were dire. But forced to this point by Riku, Reginlif couldn't care less. She wanted to win. The desire not to lose burned in her heart, a feeling she hadn't experienced in ages. Before all the dragons' shocked eyes, Riku's Crimson Eastern Dragon and Reginlif's Collapse Howl collided. In an instant, heaven and earth turned pure white, everything was wiped away, space itself shattered like a mirror, and invisible shockwaves blasted outward. Even Zerulus and the others, far away, could barely breathe, forced to defend with all their might. At last, after a few seconds of terrifying stalemate, the Crimson Dragon overpowered Collapse Howl and forced it back, reducing it to fragments of stardust that rained down on the earth, causing a cataclysmic explosion that destroyed everything nearby. Splurt. And the Crimson Dragon, moving faster than any of the dragons could see, pierced straight through Reginlif's body. Blood spurted everywhere, flesh flew, a scene of utter carnage. Reginlif the Wise Dragon was pierced through by a single kick from Riku, suffering the most devastating injury of her entire life. With everything done, the scarlet flames faded from Riku's body, and together with Reginlif, he plummeted from the sky. Heaven and earth fell silent. Only those terrifying cracks in space remained, slowly, slowly mending themselves. The wise dragon. Lost. Zhuayu and the other Dragonia stared in shock at the distant battlefield, as if lightning had struck through their minds. They were completely stunned. Because this result was simply too shocking. Riku, this human, had genuinely defeated the leader of the Dragonia in a head-on battle, the only remaining Dragon Lord, the wise dragon, Reginlif. Vard and the 4 black dragons involuntarily trembled in their massive forms. They'd actually been reckless enough to provoke this human earlier. How stupid could they have been? If Riku had wanted, they'd probably be dead dragons by now. Master, you're just making me more and more curious. Jibril murmured, her voice filled with obsession. Riku. Shui didn't hesitate, flying straight towards Riku. Though both Riku and Reginlif were plummeting to the ground, Riku's condition was slightly better because he was doing it on purpose. Reginlif was utterly exhausted, barely able to use time compression to stabilize his injuries. But the after-effects of Collapse Howl wouldn't just vanish, and Riku's last attack had pushed him to the brink of death. At this point, Reginlif's strength was barely above that of an ordinary Dragonia. Even with time compression, he couldn't return to his peak. He could only hold his wounds together. You're truly a surprising one. This is the first time I've ever tasted defeat. Reginlif spoke weakly to Riku. He had truly lost, in every sense. If Riku wanted, he could kill her right now. But Riku hadn't done so. Hey, it got a bit too real there for a minute. I'm not feeling great either. Riku's skin was showing cracks as he shook his head. He could feel his life force ebbing away. The 8 gates formation is not something you can just open at will. Using it comes at the cost of your life. I can sense your life force slipping away. Don't you have a way to recover? Reginlif asked in a low voice. Of course I do. I wouldn't risk my life just for a single match. As if the pain didn't exist, Riku replied calmly. You're an interesting human. For this alliance, you may have whatever terms you wish. We're willing to take the lead for you in the war against the god of war. Reginlif praised Riku, making a solemn promise. He naturally understood the words Riku left unsaid. If this had been a true death match, it might not have ended this way. Let's work well together. Riku's lips curled into a satisfied smile. Immediately after, he pulled a life and death rebirth pill from his system's storage and swallowed it. Before Reginlif's stunned eyes, Riku's deadly injuries rapidly healed at a rate visible to the naked eye. Dead skin sloughed off, new skin formed, his vitality rebounded, and even his aura grew several times stronger. It was like rebirth after death, a butterfly emerging from its chrysalis. Not only was Reginlif shocked, but even Riku himself was surprised by the change. He could feel that his physical strength had increased at least tenfold, and his chaos energy had also grown several times stronger. A transformation after dancing on the edge of life and death. It's incredible. Riku sighed contentedly, feeling every pore in his body rejoice. Now, he could use the 7th gate, Gate of Shock, with no side effects at all. Even if he didn't open the final gate, just using the 8 gates was enough. Even if he still couldn't defeat Reginlif without using Death Gate, he wouldn't be nearly as helpless as before. In the short term, he was unbeatable. This power-up was absolutely massive. Ha, fascinating. Your potential, I've finally seen it with my own eyes. I have a feeling you really will be the one to end it all. Artosh, I can't wait to see your face then. Reginlif laughed uproariously, his words echoing across the heavens, his tone truly astonishing. Riku, you're okay. Thank goodness. Shui flew into Riku's arms, tightly hugging him as she scanned his body from head to toe, finally letting out a sigh of relief like a real person. Ah. Master, it looks like you've gotten even stronger again. Jibril had come over as well, scanning Riku like he was the world's rarest treasure, eyes shining with fanatic obsession. Master, can I study you? Just a little. As a reward, when I recover my strength, you can do whatever you want with my body, Jibril ruled, her face a classic love-struck maniac. Idiot, quit messing around. Riku rolled his eyes. Riku, I knew you were holding back, but I didn't expect it to be to this extent. Zuralis, having flown over, looked at Riku with awe and complexity. She felt it the most. A week ago, Riku had to use tricks just to barely beat her. A week later, she was no match at all. And after unleashing his trump card, he could even defeat the wise Dragon Lord. Human, you're just too strong. How did you get so powerful? I'm really curious. Suddenly, the group of white dragons began to chatter, unable to contain their shock and curiosity. The normally proud and domineering Dragonia were suddenly turned into gossiping fanatics, noisily discussing among themselves. Sorry. We were in the wrong before. Can you forgive our ignorance? As always, strength commands respect. At this moment, Vard and the 4 black dragons lowered their heads humbly. Their pride had been completely shattered after Riku's victory over Reginlef. Riku merely gave them a cool nod. Seeing his distant attitude, the 4 black dragons were filled with bitterness and regret. One wrong move, and now the rift was hard to bridge. Riku, do you have a plan? When do we act? At this, Reginlef spoke up, looking at Riku with curiosity. All the Dragonia immediately turned their attention to him. Riku had completely conquered them with his strength. A plan? Of course. As long as I complete 3 more steps, I'll be able to drag the god of war down from his pedestal. Riku grinned confidently, holding up 3 fingers. Hearing this, Reginlef and all the Dragonia widened their eyes, listening intently as if witnessing history in the making. As Riku and the Dragonia discussed their alliance, far away, high in the sky, deep within the Fleugle's headquarters at Avonheim, a golden-eyed figure slowly opened his eyes. Chapter 42 On the throne, a tall and imposing man slowly opened his golden eyes, as if gazing through countless barriers to see a certain place. Lord Artosh, we have detected a powerful energy reaction. Its strength is second only to the one Lord Artosh unleashed when you annihilated the Heart-Hylaeath the Final. At this moment, a Fleugel girl hurried into the hall, kneeling respectfully as she reported in shock. The girl had emerald green hair, and unlike other Fleugel, she had a single horn on her head, making her especially unique. Her eyes were a heterochromatic blue and gold, and she had a pair of folded wings at her waist. I have sensed it, Artosh said with a calm nod, gazing at the girl before him, the commander of the Fleugel and the very first individual he created, named Azrael. This fluctuation is from that wise dragon, Reginlef. He fought an unknown existence. And lost. Artosh spoke slowly, a trace of interest surfacing in his golden eyes. Someone who can defeat Reginlef. It seems the world has gained a new powerful being. Defeated Reginlef? Azrael was stunned, her eyes filled with disbelief. The 3 dragon lords stood at the pinnacle of the world, even other old deists would not lightly claim they could defeat them. Now, one had actually been defeated. Lord Artosh, was it another old deus? Azrael asked. No, I did not sense a similar aura. Nor does it feel like another upper-ranked race. Hey! How interesting, Artosh chuckled. Because he was the strongest, very few things could ever catch his interest. Now, this being who defeated Reginlef had stirred a little curiosity in him. Hearing this, Azrael's shock only deepened. Not another old deus? When did the lower races gain such power? Despite her shock, Azrael didn't feel the slightest worry. With Lord Artosh present, nothing posed a threat. Before her creator, all others were as weak as ants. By the way, where is, exemplar, Jibril? Artosh asked, as if suddenly recalling something. His golden eyes gleamed with authority. Even without releasing any pressure, Azrael felt an overwhelming sense of oppression. Little Jibril seems to be hunting the elves. She hasn't returned, Azrael answered respectfully. Is that so? Artosh replied with a meaningful tone. My connection to Jibril has already been severed. What? Azrael's eyes widened in shock. As an exemplar, Jibril's actions were always unpredictable. Even though Fleugel weren't as strong as the Dragonia, she would continually challenge that powerful white dragon, returning wounded every time. Yet, she was never afraid to challenge again, a trait that baffled her kin. Jibril was the last Fleugel Artosh created, making her the youngest little sister of the race, and thus, greatly cherished by the others, especially Azrael, who practically doted on her. Hearing Lord Artosh say that his link to Jibril had been severed, how could Azrael not be alarmed and angry? Because a severed link meant something had gone very wrong. Damn it, was it the Dragonia who killed little Jibril? My lord, please allow me to lead our forces to avenge her. Azrael declared, killing intent surging. Jibril is not dead. And this has nothing to do with the Dragonia. Rather, it concerns the one who fought Reginlef. Artosh shook his head calmly. Azrael's eyes widened again in disbelief. My lord, please allow me to lead our troops to rescue little Jibril, Azrael requested once more, face determined. In her mind, Jibril had likely been defeated and captured. Considering the strength needed to defeat Reginlef, that seemed quite likely. Permission granted, Artosh said coolly. Lord Artosh, please await our good news. Azrael, face now bright with hope, rose and departed, unknown existence. Will you be able to reach this place and show me the meaning of being the strongest? Artosh once more closed his golden eyes and shook his head slightly. Ever since his battle with the Heart-Hylaeath the Final, he had pondered the meaning of strength, but never found the answer. This was also why Jibril thought her creator, the god of war, was so boring. Meanwhile, having secured the alliance with the Dragonia, Riku slowly surveyed the surrounding Dragonia. He was considering whether to contract with one of the Dragonia using the contract card. Forming a contract would grant him one of the contracted party's abilities. The Dragonia's powers were truly impressive, Whether it was their word magic or their ability to stabilize time, both were extremely desirable. If he could gain the ability to stabilize time, opening all 8 gates would be child's play, and he'd never need to fear side effects again. But who to choose? After all, he had to consider their pride. The best candidate would, of course, be Reginlif. Given her strength, she would make an excellent ally. But as the wise dragon, she was the leader of the Dragonia, it seemed unlikely she would become his subordinate. He wasn't very familiar with the other Dragonia. Thinking this, Riku's gaze settled on Zeralis. She seemed like a good choice, and they were on good terms. Riku, why are you looking at me like that? Zeralis asked, puzzled by his odd gaze. Jibril and the other Dragonia also looked on curiously. By now, all of them truly respected Riku's strength and intellect. So, Zeralis, would you like to act as an envoy between the Dragonia and humanity, and sign a contract with me? Riku smiled as he calmly stated his purpose. Huh? Zeralis froze. The other Dragonia were also stunned. Master's planning to add another member to his harem from an entirely different species? But, Dragonia can't transform into humans, you know. Jibril chimed in at the perfect time, grinning mischievously. Shut up, Jibril. Hearing this, Riku's expression stiffened, and he flicked Jibril on the forehead, clearly annoyed. Why are you spouting nonsense when we're handling serious business? Riku, do you really want a harem from every race? Shui also stared intently at Riku, speaking slowly. Why are you saying that too, Shui? Am I that kind of person? Riku rubbed his forehead in exasperation. He was so pure, did he really seem like such a depraved guy? Yeah, but master, you already have the little princess of the were beasts, Shui, me the Fleagle, and even the genius elf girl serving as your maid. Jibril, rubbing her forehead, cheerfully exposed all of Riku's secrets. Hearing this, Riku's lips twitched. It was actually impossible to argue, the more he explained, the messier it would get. Their conversation left the nearby Dragonia looking completely baffled. Even Reginlif, the wise dragon, was eyeing Riku with curiosity. This was complicated. Riku, you're not really. Zeralis wore a slightly scared look, fluttering away from him. PFFT, as if I'd ever go after you. Riku snapped irritably. What do you mean, as if you'd go after me? I'm still a beauty among the Dragonia, you know. Zeralis instantly took offense and roared back. Riku was speechless. What kind of situation is this? Sure, you're a beauty among the Dragonia, but not to me. No matter how amazing I am, there's no way I'd go after a dragon who can't even transform into a human. Alright, enough arguing. At that moment, Reginlif stepped in to mediate. Riku, I think your plan makes sense. Zeralis, signing a contract with Riku and becoming a bridge between our two races is extremely important. You need to understand how important this is, Reginlif told her. I understand. Hearing this, Zeralis nodded. It wasn't that she was unwilling, she just got a little emotional earlier. Riku immediately used a contract card to form a contract with Zeralis. Instantly, a miniature image of Zeralis appeared on the contract card, and a special bond was formed between them. Reginlif was surprised to find her connection with Zeralis suddenly cut off. She looked at Riku with renewed interest. This mysterious human clearly had many secrets. Time stabilization, acquired. Riku's lips curled up in satisfaction as he nodded. Dragonia are higher dimensional beings, he was not, so he shouldn't have been able to use this power. But the contract card seemed absurdly overpowered, it adapted the ability for him, with the caveat that he could only use it once per day. He didn't mind the limitation. After all, no item could just transform him into a higher dimensional being like the Dragonia. This balance was ideal. That's odd, my power seems to be slowly increasing. Zeralis felt her changes and looked at Riku in surprise. Well, it's a special contract. You'll grow stronger as I do, Riku explained, smiling. Now that you mention it, Master, ever since you powered up earlier, I'm recovering my strength even faster. I might be back to full power within an hour. Jibril also said, surprised. The other Dragonia all wore expressions of shock and envy. Having seen Riku's potential, they knew that if they became his subordinates, their status and power would skyrocket. Provided, of course, he actually defeated Artosh and became the one true god. If not, everyone in the alliance would only face death. An interesting contract, Reginlif commented with admiration. By the way, Reginlif, there's something I'd like to ask you. Riku put away the contract card and spoke sincerely. Although time stabilization was great, he could only use it once. Against the god of war, he might not even get the chance. In his duel with Reginlif, even under pressure, she was only able to use it once. For ordinary Dragonia battles, this was a cheat, but in top-tier battles, he might not have the chance at all. Besides, even with all 8 gates open, he still probably wouldn't be a match for the god of war. That meant boosting his power in every possible way was his top priority. Those diamond chests were now his main goal. Oh? What is it? Reginlif asked curiously. I'd like you to send me to a specific place in the dimensional space, Riku said, the corners of his mouth turning up in anticipation. I can do that. Reginlif blinked, then nodded. Jibril and Shui, remembering Riku's earlier actions, immediately chimed in as well. Master, I want to come too. Riku, I'll stay by your side. Fine, Riku agreed after scratching his nose. It didn't matter, nobody else could see the diamond chest anyway. Finally, 1 human, 1 Dragonia, 1 Ex Machina, and 1 Flugel headed into the dimensional space under Riku's guidance. Dimensional space was an endless sea of white, enough to make anyone dizzy. But Riku had a clear goal, with Reginlif carrying him. They arrived at the spot of the diamond chest. Before him, a glittering, radiant diamond chest appeared. Riku's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Under the puzzled gazes of Shui and Jibril, Riku walked over and placed his hand on the chest. Click. The diamond chest opened with a sharp sound. A light far brighter than anything before poured out, revealing a glowing orb. Ding. Congratulations, Master, you have opened a diamond chest and obtained a Longinus, boosted gear, from High School DxD, one of the 13 Longinus. Sealed within is the Red Dragon Emperor, Drake. Effect, every 10 seconds in a human world, the wielder's power doubles. Although temporary, this can raise the user's strength above even demon kings and gods. If powered up to the limit, it can even slay deities. However, the user's body has limits. If they can't endure, they will be destroyed by the power. Second ability, Boosted Gear Gift, allows you to transfer the multiplied power to another person or weapon. Chapter 43 Boosted Gear, huh? Its effects seem to overlap a bit with the 8 gates. Rick mused for a moment. But still, it wasn't useless. The Boosted Gear's abilities were incredibly powerful, not just a simple boost like the 8 gates. If he went all out, ignoring his body's limits, the amplification would be terrifying. Of course, that was only if his body could withstand it. If not, his body would break before his power could even explode, which would just be a tragedy. Oh well, the Boosted Gear is worthy of a diamond chest. Riku shook his head and pushed away his stray thoughts. Hey, system, I have a question. Does this Boosted Gear actually have Drake's soul inside? Riku frowned, looking very serious. If it did, he'd rather not use it. He didn't want some male dragon watching while he was getting intimate with his wives. No. There is only a pure source of power within, no other entity or curses. Hey, that's good enough. Riku nodded in satisfaction. For once, the system did something right. Riku, did you find something? Shui asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Yeah, something like that. You'll see it in the future. Riku replied with a smile. Come on, Master, can't you at least tell us? Jibril protested, a little dissatisfied. Her curiosity was burning her up, and right now her desire to know about Riku's secrets was almost unbearable. That's a secret, Riku said with a sly smile. Both Jibril and Shui gave him resentful looks. Haha, things really are lively now. To have all these different races gathered together, what a miracle. Do you have anything else to do? If not, I'll send you out. I'm still weak and want to recover in dimensional space, Reginlif, the wise dragon, said with a smile. All right. Thanks for your help. Riku nodded in gratitude. No need for thanks. After all, you're basically my leader now. Reginlif said earnestly. Without saying more, Reginlif sent Riku and the others out. Once outside, Riku decided not to linger. Instead, he planned to swing by the vampire nest before heading back, not to bring the vampires into the alliance, but simply to grab the platinum chest there. To Riku, whether the vampires joined the alliance or not was unimportant. They weren't on his list of priority races. But as they were making their way, Jibril, now fully recovered, suddenly stopped. Jibril, what's wrong? Riku frowned, looking at the Flugel, who had a wry smile on her face. Sorry, Master, but it looks like we're in trouble. They've finally realized something's wrong and have brought the army with them. Jibril said apologetically. Riku, 100 strong spirit energy signatures have appeared 1,000 kilometers away. Race, Flugel, Shui reported calmly. 100 Flugel. So they already know about Riku's power, Zerlis said gravely. Being discovered by the Flugel so soon was definitely not a good thing. If they want a fight, they'll get one, Riku replied coldly. Understood. Zerlis's eyes lit up with fighting spirit. Jibril nodded as well. Having decided, they no longer traveled, but simply waited. It wasn't long before the distant sky was dotted with nearly 100 black specks, 100 Flugel. As the god-slaying weapons, it was rare for this many Fleugel to move together. Such a deployment was usually only for god-tier enemies, like Reginlif, the Wise Dragon. But today, because of Riku, Fleugel Commander Azrael had mobilized a quarter of their total force. Meow, 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 Lil Jibril. I'm so glad you're okay. I'll come get you soon. The Fleugel stopped a kilometer away, and the leader, Azrael, looked at Jibril, overjoyed. Azrael, there's no need for you to worry. I already serve my new master, Lord Riku, and I won't be coming back. Jibril replied helplessly. Lil Jibril, you must be under control, right? Don't worry, I'll rescue you. Azrael insisted, looking righteously indignant. The other Fleugel glared at the group, killing intent in their eyes. Jibril could only twitch her mouth. Azrael was the strongest Fleugel, rivaling the Dragonias, but not the brightest. She was an excellent tactician and commander, which was why she led the Fleugel, but her IQ in other areas was lacking. Right now, that was a headache for Jibril. Did she really look like she was being controlled? Honestly, Jibril didn't want to fight her sisters here. She knew there would inevitably be a showdown in the future, but now was not the time. If war started here, it would ruin Riku's plans. Enough dreaming. If you came to wipe us out, then show your strength and see if you can do it, Riku said, stepping forward and crossing his arms, his tone cold. Meow meow meow, a monkey? Azrael and the other Fleugel stared at Riku, dumbfounded. They were confused why Zerlis the Dragonia was here, but didn't think much of it. Their focus was on Shui. After all, if someone could defeat Reginlif, and if it was an Ex Machina connector, that would explain everything. The Ex Machina had once slain Reginlif and his 7 subordinate Dragonoids. But Azrael and the Fleugel never considered that the one they had ignored, the monkey, was the real leader. To the Fleugel, humans were monkeys, unworthy of notice. But here, this monkey had defeated Reginlif, taken Jibril as a captive, and seemingly brought both an Ex Machina and a Dragonoid under his command. Their brains short-circuited, they just couldn't process it. How could a monkey do any of this? Azrael suddenly noticed the terrifying power within Riku, her expression changing. This power was stronger than that of the Fleugel. What an annoying thing to say. Riku glanced over at the distant Fleugel army, his face calm and indifferent. Zerlis, Jibril, you two don't need to fight. Just protect Shui, Riku said calmly as he walked forward. Thank you, Master, Jibril replied, giving a rare, sincere smile. She understood why Riku didn't want her to join the fight. Riku. It's always you fighting. Shui can't help, can only hold you back. Shui's eyes flickered, a rare unease in her heart. She hated that feeling. But, Lord Riku. Zerlis started, hesitating. Zerlis, I want to test out my new power. Don't get in my way, Riku replied coolly. New power? Zerlis was stunned. Jibril and Shui looked over in shock as well. How could he have gained new power so quickly? Without answering further, Riku simply summoned the boosted gear. In an instant, a crimson gauntlet appeared on Riku's right hand, a green gem at its center, radiating an overwhelming sense of presence. This is the aura of a dragon? But it's different from ours. Shui stared in astonishment at the boosted gear, muttering to herself. Master, just how many secrets are you still hiding? You're making me more and more curious. Jibril said, her maniac side returning, filled with fanatic energy. Shui quietly began analyzing the gauntlet. Meow meow meow, how does a human have the power of the Dragonias? On the other side, Azrael and the other Fleugel were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand what was happening. Riku's strength made them stop calling him monkey, but now this being who had supposedly defeated Reginlif was not only on good terms with Zerlis, but was now releasing the power of the Dragonoids as well. Azrael couldn't make sense of his connection to the Dragonoids at all. Not attacking? Well then, I'll go first. Without caring about their confusion, Riku ignored Azrael and spoke with indifference. As he finished speaking, Riku vanished from his spot, appearing beside Azrael, and punched. The air compressed and burst, his fist growing larger in Azrael's mismatched pupils. At the last moment, Azrael used shift to dodge the attack. But the Fleugel behind her were less fortunate. Even though they reacted, Riku's fist shattered their shields and sent them flying, vomiting blood as they disappeared like shooting stars into the distance. Meow meow meow, this human can use our shift. And his power is terrifying. Azrael looked at Riku in shock, her expression growing more grave. Squads 1 through 9, formation. Encircle the enemy. 10th squad, try to rescue Lil Jibril. Azrael commanded. 10 Fleugel per squad is their standard for a large-scale battle. Understood. The Fleugel moved with precision, surrounding Riku in a tight formation. Even the wounded Fleugel returned and glared fiercely at him. At the same time, 10 Fleugel moved toward Zerlis's group to face off. The life and death rebirth pill is impressive. This post-breakthrough power can go toe-to-toe with the Flegel. Surrounded by 90 so-called weapons of war, Riku remained perfectly calm, actually marveling at his new power. He knew his strength had skyrocketed, but he hadn't realized the scale. After all, he couldn't just ask the Dragonoids to spar with him after their last battle, they'd never agree. So the Flegel showing up was a perfect opportunity to test his limits. While Riku was musing, Zuralis, Jibril, and Shui were all deeply shocked. Riku wasn't even using any of his usual explosive states, and he could already injure Flegel. That was simply ridiculous. Attack! Azrael shouted. She vanished from sight, a black energy sword forming in her hand as she slashed at Riku. Clang! Riku calmly caught the energy sword with the boosted gear, their power clashing, whipping the air into a frenzy. Azrael's face grew even more serious. Riku, relying on pure physique alone, could injure normal Flegel. With spirit energy rivaling her own, she found it hard to keep up. Boost. Suddenly, a crisp voice sounded from the jewel. Riku's aura instantly doubled. With a single squeeze, he shattered Azrael's energy sword. He threw another punch, impossibly fast. Azrael's expression shifted, and she barely dodged. Heavenly Smite. Suddenly, 3 Flegel raised dark lances, pouring all their energy into a single attack at Riku. After firing, their energy was exhausted, and they reverted to their childlike forms, tumbling from the sky. But, gathering the last of their strength, they used shift to teleport back to base. With their power gone, they were no longer useful in this fight. Third gate, Gate of Life, open. Facing the incoming Heavenly Smite, Riku stayed calm and opened the third gate. In an instant, blue energy flared around him, pushing his power to terrifying heights. Just opening the third gate, combined with a single boost, Riku's power now far surpassed his previous self at the 7th gate. Hyrutora. In the next moment, Riku's fist blurred, and a blue tiger roared toward the incoming Heavenly Smite. The blue tiger tore the lances apart, scattering light across the battlefield in a world-shattering explosion. Not only that, the daytime tiger roared toward the Flegel in front of him, threatening to tear apart anything in its way. All the Flegel's alarms went off. They absolutely could not block this head-on, so the front squads all desperately used shift to dodge. But a few Flegel, a moment too slow, were swallowed up by the daytime tiger. The daytime tiger not only swallowed up several Flegel but also blasted apart several distant mountains, a terrifying roar shaking both sky and earth. The ground itself wailed again under the force of the attack. Damn it! Don't stay in one place, rotate attacks at long range. Riku's overwhelming strength made Azrael's face ashen as she shouted in anger. Instantly, the Flegel formed a special battle formation and began unleashing a variety of powerful spells, gravity fields, freezing magic, and other restricting abilities cast in waves. The rest, led by Azrael, concentrated their strongest single-target spells. While these spells might not have the wide-range destruction of some skills, when it comes to killing, this approach was the most effective. In an instant, the sky above filled with dazzling, chaotic spells. Riku felt his body suddenly grow heavy, an intense gravity field pressing down on him. Not a bad tactic. But I can use shift, after all, Riku said coolly, instantly vanishing from his spot and causing all attacks to miss. He reappeared before one Flegel and threw a heavy punch, the air pressure alone devastating. Boom. The next moment, Azrael stepped in front of her comrade, throwing up a shield. With a dull thud, cracks like spiderwebs spread across the shield before it shattered. Seizing the opportunity, Azrael and the other Flegel used shift to disappear, narrowly avoiding injury. This guy somehow learned our shift. Ordinary methods won't restrict his movements. He's a real problem, Azrael said grimly, gritting her teeth. Boost. Just then, the jewel in Riku's gauntlet rang out again, his aura swelling to double. What is this ability? We have to finish this quickly, we can't let him keep getting stronger, Azrael muttered, feeling the pressure rise. Seal the space. Suddenly, a Flegel used shift to appear right in front of Riku, pouring all her power into sealing the surrounding space. Azrael. Now's your chance. Clearly, this Flegel intended to sacrifice herself to give her comrades an opening to defeat Riku. Attack! Azrael shouted. In a flash, the same scene played out, countless restricting spells wrapped around Riku, while 20 Flegel gathered power for Heavenly Smite, the rest casting their strongest single-target spells. Terrifying energy erupted in the sky, shaking the earth below and carving out deep fissures from the force. To use death to create an opportunity, not a bad plan. But let me show you something even more interesting, Riku said, making no attempt to break free. He gazed at the Flegel, sealing his space with almost admiring eyes. For some reason, this Flegel suddenly felt a great sense of unease. Meanwhile, Zuralis was fighting 8 Flegel nearby, the sky erupting with violent energy, storms forming under the pressure. Lil Jibril, looks like that human is done for. We'll have you home soon, said one of the Flugel, facing Jibril and Shui. But the four just stared at each other, not fighting. They believed Jibril could leave with them at any time, and that she must only be staying to protect the ex-machina, obviously coerced by Riku. How many times do I have to say it? Would you just retreat already? Otherwise. If Master gets angry, the consequences will be severe, Jibril said, shaking her head. Failure? My master never fails. Not even the old man can beat him eventually, even he'll lose to my master, Jibril said indifferently, her calm reflecting absolute trust in Riku. Did they really think they could beat Riku with this? Or beat her master? Ridiculous. Riku hadn't even used his illusion abilities, nor his energy absorption, nor even his true trump card. Right now, he was simply testing out his new power, just testing, and he was already this strong. What did the Flugel have that could beat him? Jibril, Zuralis, and Shui all understood, but the Flugel never would. They didn't realize they were just being used as sandbags. Lil Jibril, even if it's you, I can't let you insult Lord Artosh. Lord Artosh is the one and only sovereign, the king of kings, god of gods, strongest of the strong. How could he ever lose to a human? Besides, that human is about to be eliminated, one mature Flugel said, unable to accept Jibril's words. Is that so? Then just watch. Watch the outcome of this battle, Jibril replied softly, her dazzling eyes never leaving the fight. The battle was about to reach its climax, and her master wore that ever-calm, in-control expression. Seeing that persuasion was useless, the two Flugel could only stare at the battlefield, eager to witness Riku's defeat. At that moment, all the Flugel finished charging their spells. At Azrael's command, they unleashed their attacks. Thunder spears, fire dragons, 20 heavenly smites, countless other spells mixed together in a terrifying wave that surged toward Riku. The force warped even space itself, ripping open unstable fissures. But even facing this storm of devastating attacks, Riku remained calm, slowly raising the boosted gear. Boom. In the next instant, a terrifying explosion rocked the sky, wild energy spreading from Riku's position in every direction, ravaging an area millions of meters wide. Fortunately, the fight was high in the sky. If it were on the ground, the destruction would have left a terrifying new crater. The Flugel all used shift to escape the blast radius. Even Zuralis and the Flugel, fighting her, stopped to defend themselves. As for the Flugel who sealed Riku's space, she was obliterated by her own side's attacks, not even a trace remaining. How's the situation? After using shift to get to a safe distance, Azrael and a 70 or so remaining Flugel, aside from those who'd lost their power and returned to headquarters, watched the distant explosion with grim expressions. Elsewhere, Jibril, Zuralis, and Shui combined their defenses to ward off the shockwave, all three staring intently at the epicenter. Boom. A deafening roar echoed out, and a terrifying aura surged from the center of the explosion, so intense that Azrael herself felt a chill. The Flugel were not afraid of death, falling in battle was an honor. But even so, every Flugel felt an instinctual fear. That aura was simply overwhelming. How can he possibly be this strong? One Flugel muttered. Don't forget he's the one who defeated the wise dragon. This much is only natural, Azrael replied, steadying herself. That's master. The dragon aura on him is getting even stronger. Jibril's eyes shone with obsession as she stared into the blast. Zuralis and Shui didn't speak, but their focus never left the battlefield. Whoosh! Suddenly, a tempest swept out, dispersing the torrent of energy at the center. The powerful winds forced Jibril and the others to reinforce their defenses, but their eyes never left the center. Then, in the eyes of all, a figure suddenly appeared, his presence leaving everyone in awe. Riku stood, wrapped in brilliant crimson armor, a pair of blood-red dragon wings sprouting from his back, the armor itself radiating red energy. Over the red energy, green flames flickered, creating a unique and fearsome form. What? Azrael stared in shock, her mind reeling. She had never seen power like this. Before, she thought it was the aura of the dragonkin, but now she wasn't so sure. And yet, it still radiated dragon-like power. A new form. As expected of Master. Incredible. Jibril exclaimed, full of admiration and obsession. This form isn't much different from when Riku fought the wise dragon. Zuralis muttered, still in shock. Riku's trump cards were endless, impossible to predict. Riku. Shui murmured, her eyes rippling with emotion. Well then, let's start round 2, Flugel. Riku, now fully armored, locked eyes with Azrael, his aura climbing higher and higher. Boosted Gear's balance breaker, combined with the third gate of the 8 gates, pushed his power to new heights. While the surging strength made his body ache, he could still handle it, proof that the 8 gates and balance breaker could be used together, so long as his body could withstand it. Damn it, attack. Azrael's face darkened, and she gave the order. She moved first, unleashing a flaming energy spear that tore through space toward Riku. After that, the rest of the Fleagle unleashed all their magic at once, no hesitation, no holding back, not even sparing a thought for Zerulus. Crack! Riku simply grinned, his figure turning into a blur of blue-green light, brutally smashing through the barrage. Every spell was shattered by sheer force, even the stronger attacks were punched apart, left as nothing but scraps of magic. In an instant, Riku appeared in front of a Fleagle, fist cocked. Boom! The space around him warped, making it nearly impossible to use shift. Sploosh! That Fleagle could only watch in horror as the fist expanded in her vision before she was obliterated, nothing left but a mist of blood. Damn it, form the Desperate. Azrael's eyes flashed with killing intent as she roared. At the same time, she gathered all her might within a blink, a massive, jet-black energy lance formed in her hand, Heavenly Smite. She instantly shifted behind Riku, trying to land a point-blank blow. SZZZZT. But to Riku, this was nothing. Azrael might be a match for a Dragonia, but at this level, she was nothing to him. So, in Azrael's eyes, Riku casually caught the powerful Heavenly Smite with his bare hand. The screech of clashing energy was harsh, but the spear itself didn't move an inch. Weak. Honestly, you're starting to bore me. Is this all you've got? Riku said coolly, looking down on Azrael. Hey. Maybe you're strong, but you have one weakness, Azrael replied, locking eyes with him. Oh? Riku smiled playfully. I realized in this fight, you're arrogant. That arrogance will be your undoing. Azrael sneered. Suddenly, the Heavenly Smite in her hand exploded at point-blank range. Even with her defenses, she was blasted away, coughing blood and covered in wounds. But there was no pain in her eyes, only a fierce glint. Now! All-out attack! At that moment, more than 50 Fleagle poured their energy into a single comrade. The immense power made her wings burst and blood spatter everywhere, but her face was twisted in wild ecstasy and killing intent. In her upraised hands, a colossal black spear condensed. This was a Heavenly Smite powered by the strength of 51 Fleagle, a blow even the wise dragon would treat with the utmost caution. With a mad grin, the Fleagle hurled the gigantic Heavenly Smite at Riku. The force compressed space, shattering it wherever it passed, spatial fractures rippling out in every direction. With so much force, even using shift to dodge was nearly impossible. You call me arrogant? Please. I'm just curious about my own limits. I gave you a chance on purpose, Riku said, covered in a dazzling mix of green and red energy, unmoved by the incoming spear. ZZZZZZZT. With that, Riku raised his hand. From the boosted gear, he conjured a massive energy blast, red energy intertwined with green spirals. The crimson-green beam collided with the gigantic Heavenly Smite in midair. In an instant, the entire sky shattered. Crack! As the two overwhelming forces clashed, the surrounding space shattered, forming shrieking black holes and rampant black lightning, pulsing with destructive light. Everyone except Riku was suffocating under the weight of that power. The 51 Fleagle who had expended all their strength scrambled to escape with help from their sisters. If they got too close, even Fleagle would be annihilated by the shockwaves of this clash. Jibril, Zerulus, and Shui also realized this, retreating quickly, though their eyes never left Riku. At the center, the gigantic Heavenly Smite and Riku's energy cannon collided, creating an unstable maelstrom. But if one looked closely, it was clear the Heavenly Smite was gradually pressing down Riku's blue-crimson energy cannon. That was only natural. 51 Fleagle had poured their entire power into that attack, while Riku was still only testing his strength, not going all out. We won. Azrael stared from afar, heart trembling. If they lost even now, it would mean utter defeat. Impressive strength, but it's still not quite enough to beat me. Riku looked at the Heavenly Smite with calm indifference. Gate of Pain, fourth gate, open. The next instant, Riku spoke again, utterly calm. Suddenly, the blue aura around him deepened, interwoven with crimson energy. His power surged even higher. But even for Riku, the rise in strength became hard to bear. Blue veins bulged on his forehead, and his whole body felt swollen and strained. Still, he endured. Ha! With a roar, blue and crimson energy wove together as his energy cannon exploded with new force, overpowering the gigantic Heavenly Smite and hurling it skyward. A moment later, the Heavenly Smite shattered, bursting into fragments of energy that rained down on the world like a black light storm, strangely beautiful. Yet beneath that beauty lurked utter destruction. Wherever the fragments of Heavenly Smite fell, explosions tore through everything. In an instant, a region millions of meters across was erased, mountains, earth, and oceans were vaporized or left blackened and cracked. The planet itself seemed to scream. Any unfortunate creatures caught in the blast were reduced to ash in an instant. But even after shattering the heavenly smite, Riku's energy cannon didn't stop. It blasted out of the atmosphere, slamming into a distant satellite and reducing it to space debris. The force of this shook the whole planet. Every powerful being on the surface stared in silent shock. Even the god of war opened his golden eyes, a smile flickering on his lips, seemingly growing more interested in Riku by the second. Gulp. Azrael and the other Fleagle stared, dumbstruck, swallowing hard before falling silent. It seemed they'd provoked a monster. Even Jibril, Zoralis, and Shui were speechless, their silence spoke louder than words. Retreat. Finally, Azrael, her face full of regret, gave the order in a wary voice. They no longer had any chance of victory, staying would be suicide. And while Fleagle were unafraid of death, dying for nothing was meaningless. Leaving? Did you ask my permission? Riku looked down on them. He threw a punch. Instantly, a terrifying shockwave ripped through the sky, smashing everything in its path and covering all the Fleagle. It was so fast that most of them couldn't even react. Azrael's face turned to despair. Was this the result of bringing her army? Would her sisters all die here? How could she ever face Artosh? Boom. At the last moment, a golden light flared before Azrael. An incomparable energy formed a golden barrier, stopping Riku's punch cold. His fist struck the barrier, sending out huge ripples, but the shield held firm. That's the power of Lord Artosh? Lord Artosh saved us. Azrael was stunned, then overjoyed and ashamed. They were supposed to be Artosh's blade, but here they were relying on their creator to save them. Shameful. God of war, Artosh, huh? Riku narrowed his eyes at the golden barrier. He hadn't used all his power in that punch, but his opponent had defended his followers from thousands of kilometers away. Even so, Riku hadn't been able to break the shield. The power he'd just experienced cooled in his veins. Even with Balance Breaker and the fourth gate, nearly beyond his body's limits, he was still no match for the god of war. Human hero, we await your challenge when you become stronger. May you show us the meaning of the strongest. A majestic voice echoed through the heavens, making Riku's golden eyes flash. Hey, interesting. You'd better be ready soon, I'll drag you off that throne. Riku dispelled his armor, folding his arms, calm as ever. A light chuckle rang out. The god of war's presence faded, and Azrael and the remaining Fleagle disappeared with it. Riku gazed up at the sky, now dark with smoke and ash, his eyes shining. Who'd have thought that old man would save Azrael and the others? He always acted so cold before. Jibril shifted to Riku's side, sighing. Was he really saving Azrael? Riku said coolly. Jibril paused, realizing the truth. Artosh cared only about the meaning of strength. He'd let his own followers die countless times. His only reason for appearing now was Riku. Saving Azrael was just a bonus. Still, this meant that Riku now had the god of war's full attention. The consequences could be serious. Chapter 44 Riku's Sama, what was that form just now? The dragon attribute in your aura was so pure, Zoralis suddenly asked. This question made Shui and Jibril both look over as well. Well, just think of it as something I realized while fighting Reginlef, Riku replied, rubbing his nose helplessly. The truth about the system was something he could never reveal. Riku, that's a lie, Shui said flatly. Shui, at times like this, keeping quiet is the right choice, Riku retorted with a roll of his eyes, reaching over to pat Shui on the head. Sure enough, trying to gloss things over in front of Shui was impossible. But Shui wants to know everything about Riku, she said, gazing at him steadily. Well, I'll tell you someday, okay? Riku shook his head. Hearing this, Shui eventually nodded. Seeing Shui become more and more human-like, Riku nodded in satisfaction, her emotions were getting richer by the day. Zoralis, let's keep going, he said. Okay. With that, Riku, Jibril, and Shui once again climbed onto Zoralis' back. Soon after, Riku lay back on Zoralis's back, his head pillowed in Jibril's soft, plush lap, gazing leisurely at the sky. After unleashing so much power just now, he was honestly exhausted. By the way, Master, are you going to the vampires' territory because you want to bring them into the alliance too? Jibril asked curiously, stroking Riku's forehead. No, I'm just after some treasure, one that only I can find, Riku answered after a moment's thought, keeping things vague. So, does that mean the power you just used also came from some treasure you found with the Dragonia? Jibril pressed. You could say that, Riku replied lightly. The only reason he answered at all was because Shui's gaze was tinged with a bit of guilt. Master, since I've recovered, how about making a deal with me? Jibril's eyes sparkled, leaning so close her face was almost touching his, her smile a picture of madness. Jibril, what's your current status? Riku raised an eyebrow, exhaling into her face, his tone calm. Why, Your maid, of course. Jibril answered without hesitation. If you're my maid, and I want to play with your body, do I even need to make a deal? Riku said, utterly serious. Ah. That's true, isn't it? Jibril froze for a moment, then tilted her head in surprise. As the person I respect most in the world, Master, is welcome to play with my body whenever you want. Do you want me to undress and serve you now? She asked, her face suddenly filled with crazed devotion. Riku's mouth twitched. He knew Jibril meant it. She'd really do it. Reproductive behavior, prohibited, Shui suddenly interjected. Hey! Idiot Flegel, don't you dare mate with Master on my back. Zerlis snarled, glaring over her shoulder. Era? Are you jealous because you can't transform into a human and make love to Master? Jibril replied, brushing her hair back and taunting her. Jibril, if you keep this up, things might get out of hand, Riku said, brows raised, his face serious. Actually, Master, I kind of hope you do lose control. After all, you only ever spoil that little Fia, Jibril challenged, a sly smile on her face. Very well, Jibril. You've succeeded in provoking my anger. When we get back, I'll teach you what it means to respect your master, Riku said with authority. I'm looking forward to it, Jibril said, her lips curling up as she smiled sweetly. You're both idiots, Zerlis muttered. At that moment, Shui had been staring at Riku, clearly wanting to say something, her eyes flickering. Shui, is something wrong? Riku asked, noticing her unease. Shui wants to help Riku. But since Fia won't share her reference data, I can't create the optimal hole for you, Shui said with a small frown. Riku rubbed his nose. Shui's obsession with this matter was truly persistent. Also, as a combatant, I feel like I'm just a burden. I hate being useless, Shui said softly, eyes on Riku. These words stunned Riku, Jibril, and Zerlis for a moment. Riku understood, but the others hadn't expected Shui to have such complex feelings. It wasn't in line with the definition of ex machina at all. Shui, you don't need to overthink things. To me, you're one of the most important beings in the world. Besides, Shui, you're also one of my greatest trump cards, my ace in winning the Suniaster, Riku said, gently caressing her small face, his expression serious. Shui isn't that strong. Shui's eyes brightened, then dimmed again. Shui is just a disconnected analysis unit. Disconnected doesn't mean you can't go back. Shui, I'll not only help you reconnect, but I'll make you the leader of all ex machina, Riku promised with utter seriousness. At these words, Shui's eyes widened, and even Jibril and Zerlis froze. Do you believe in yourself? Riku smiled, voice soft. For Riku, Shui will do it. No matter what the calculations say, my heart tells me I can. No, for Riku, I will do it, Shui said firmly after a moment. That's enough. No matter what, Shui, you are my most important contract partner. Our lives, souls, and will were already joined the first time we looked at each other, weren't they? Riku said gently. Shui, rarely, smiled a real, human smile and nodded, then lay against Riku, listening to his heartbeat. Riku, too, stroked her head, a gentle smile on his lips. This warmth, this feeling, was something Shui wasn't sure how to describe. She didn't know how it was different from the warmth of energy flow, but somehow, it was. I'm actually a little jealous, Jibril thought to herself quietly as she watched the two. She hadn't even felt this way when Riku showered Fia with affection. As they chatted, Zerlis quickly headed toward the vampire homeland. Truthfully, Zerlis was a bit envious of how Riku and the others could talk and joke so freely. Sure, she could interject sometimes, but being the one someone sits on for a conversation is not the same as talking face to face. Why don't dragons have a shape-shifting skill? Zerlis grumbled to herself. With all the lively chatter, they soon reached the designated location, a shadowy mountain valley, where Zerlis landed. Riku-sama, are you sure this is the place? Zerlis scanned the valley below with her dragon eyes, puzzled. Of course. Among all races, vampires' concealment skills are top tier, Riku said with a confident smile. Especially vampires who've just fed, even old Deus can't detect them. That's true, Zerlis nodded. Master, how do you plan to make them come out? Jibril asked with a mischievous grin, though she clearly already had an idea. Just to do what you're thinking, let's give them a little scare, Riku replied leisurely. In the shadowy valley, the mountains had been hollowed out to house castle-like structures. At this moment, many vampires had sensed several terrifying spirit signatures from the sky above. This left them all anxious and trembling. If it were just passers-by, that would be one thing, but the fact that the group hovered right overhead meant their target could only be the vampires. Your Majesty, the ones lingering above are most likely a high-ranking race. Flegel, maybe even Dragonia. We should evacuate immediately, a female vampire said, kneeling on one knee before a petite, cold-eyed, red-haired girl in a black dress, who sat on the throne. The girl's ears were pointed but shorter than an elf's, a distinguishing trait. I know. They've already found us. Escape isn't realistic, the girl said coldly. If we try to flee now, a single area attack from them could wipe us out. She was calm, too calm, in fact, for someone likely being targeted by a high race. This was her responsibility as queen. But the kneeling vampire's voice faltered, her expression desperate and anxious. We'll see what they want. Even if they attack, so what? Worst case, we use a blood sacrifice and summon our creator, the girl replied icily. Our creator. I understand, the vampire guard answered, nodding heavily. Vampires inside, our master just said this, you've got 1 minute to come out or we'll blow up your nest. Jibrill's cheerful voice suddenly rang out, causing the queen's crimson pupils to narrow. I'll go take a look. Prepare the ritual, be ready to summon at any moment, the vampire queen ordered coolly. Your Majesty, let us go. It's too dangerous for you. The guards protested. Prepare the ritual, she said sternly. Understood, they replied, all shuddering, and hurried away respectfully. The girl, taking only 2 guards, turned into black mist and vanished from the castle. My master, looks like they're trying to wait us out, still hoping for a miracle, Jibril giggled, floating in the air, gathering spirit energy as if she were really about to cast a huge spell. That may not be so, Riku said from atop Zerla's head, peering down at the valley below, a meaningful look in his eyes. If the vampires weren't stupid, they'd send someone out to probe and stall for time. The vampire race's creator, the god of shadows, Gagraz, was still alive. They could summon him if things got desperate. Vampires emerging 3 in total, Shui said, her eyes flashing with data as she stood by Riku's side. See? Riku chuckled. In that case, I'll spare them a spell. What a pity, Jibril said, sounding disappointed. She had been ready to go all out. A girl? Riku raised an eyebrow as he noticed the 3 figures emerging from the valley, a strange expression on his face. Are all the race leaders female? I for the were beasts, think for elves, Regen live for Dragonias most of the time, and now even the vampires. Fleeble exemplar Jibril, Dragonia, Ex Machina, and what's that other one? As Riku stared at the girl, she stared right back, her heart in turmoil. She couldn't understand how such mutually hostile races could travel together in peace. And as for Riku, whose presence clearly marked him as the leader, she couldn't imagine what race he belonged to. Human? But how could a human be this strong? What do you want? The girl asked coolly, black mist swirling around her, small bat wings fluttering as her crimson eyes locked on Riku. Even facing someone who could wipe her out with a wave of their hand, the girl's expression didn't change. She was perfectly calm. Interesting, Riku thought. In chaotic times like these, no race had a simple leader. Shouldn't you introduce yourself first? Riku said blandly. Even without intentionally releasing his aura, the presence Riku gave off was enough to make the girl feel heavy. His long campaign and string of victories had given him an unshakable natural pressure. I am Sonia, queen of the vampire race, the girl said, eyes flickering with a trace of shock but still remaining cool and courteous, giving a noble's bow. Sonia. I'll remember that, Riku said, nodding. You may call me Riku, he continued. Riku. May I be so bold as to ask, are you human? Sonia asked, keeping her etiquette flawless. Hey, what do you think? Riku smiled back, answering with a question. I see. Sonia's eyes finally wavered, and she could no longer maintain her previous composure. Chapter 45. Seeing the looks on Sonia and the 2 vampire guards behind her, both Jibril and Zerles couldn't help but feel a bit nostalgic. After all, they'd once been like that too. But after witnessing more and more of Riku's power and his terrifying rate of growth, they had become much calmer. I came here for 2 simple reasons. First, I'm passing by to pick something up. Second, I want to have a chat with your creator, the shadow god Gagraz, Riku said lightly, staring straight at the young girl before him. Hearing this, Sonia and her 2 vampire guards fell silent. He wanted to chat with their creator, could that reason be any more casual? May I ask what it is you're here to find? Sonia asked calmly. Riku's nonchalant manner made it clear to her, he didn't consider their creator to be an enemy. You don't need to know that, Riku replied coolly. I understand. Please follow me if our hospitality falls short, please forgive us, Sonia said, giving a slight bow and speaking respectfully. No matter where you are, so long as you're not enemies, the strong always enjoy special privileges. At least for now, they were not enemies. After giving Riku a deep look, Sonia turned and flew down. Zerles, just wait here. I'll be back soon, Riku instructed calmly, then followed after Sonia, with Jibril and Shui following behind him. Seeing this, Zerlis could only fly in the air in frustration. Her body was simply too big to enter. After a few twists and turns, they made their way through the dim cave. Finally, they arrived at a deep cavern filled with castles, almost like an underground city. The sight was rather spectacular. At the moment, a group of vampires was eagerly waiting. When they saw Sonia appear, they looked relieved. But as soon as they spotted Jibril and Shui, they were all startled and immediately went on guard. The reputations of the Fleeble and the Ex Machina were simply too fearsome. As for Riku, he was completely ignored after all. Everyone knew how weak humans were. Not every vampire had Sonia's broad perspective. Sonia calmly ordered her people to fall back, lest they anger Riku and bring disaster upon the clan. Lord Riku, do you need us to help search? Sonia glanced at Riku beside her, unable to resist asking. No need, just follow me. Otherwise, if I accidentally kill your people while searching, that's on you, Riku replied indifferently. I understand. Sonia nodded. Indeed, if she weren't there, it was very likely that some of her clan would be unable to resist trying to attack Riku. The outcome would be simple, her people would die, and nothing else. Eventually, guided precisely by Riku, they arrived in front of a luxurious castle's door. Open it, Riku said, the corner of his lips curling up in anticipation. Lord Riku, are you sure it's here? Sonia, for once, looked hesitant and unsure. Yes, it's definitely in there, Riku affirmed. The system map wouldn't be wrong unless it was a diamond chest in some tricky dimensional space. All this time, Jibril and Shui kept a close eye on Riku. They were both too curious about his secrets after all. They hadn't found anything, yet Riku acted like he'd discovered something. This time, they were determined to see it clearly. Jibril and Shui, who should have been bitter rivals, were, for once, in complete agreement. Unfortunately, their wish was not going to come true. All right. Sonia pursed her lips, clearly conflicted, but finally stepped forward and put her hand on the door. The two female vampire guards behind her, however, had odd, expectant looks on their faces. You two, go notify everyone else to put the ritual on hold for now, Sonia suddenly ordered her guards with authority. Ah. Oh. The two guards immediately looked disappointed and a little resentful, but left quietly. Oh my, they seem quite curious about this room. Are you hiding something in here, little bat? Jibril noticed the oddity and teased Sonia with a grin. None of your business, Sonia retorted coldly, frowning at Jibril's mocking nickname. But if you looked closely, you could see the struggle in her eyes. Even Riku was getting curious. This vampire queen was definitely an ice queen type, yet now she was showing real emotion. After that, Sonia pursed her lips, pushed open the grand door, and revealed the room within. The entire room was pink, with underwear scattered everywhere, making it both messy and suggestive. There were even lots of plush toys, truly a room overflowing with girlish charm. This sight made even Jibril freeze. Riku was a bit stunned too, then looked at the slightly embarrassed vampire girl beside him with a strange expression. Was this what they called Gapmo? On the surface, she was an icy queen, but in reality, she had a super girly heart. Not a bad trait at all. Riku couldn't help rubbing his chin, looking appreciatively at this high-level, attractive, endearing, Gapmo, and very legal ally vampire queen. Hee. Did Master just fall for Sonia? Want me to nab her and bring her to be your maid right now? Jibril immediately picked up on Riku's fleeting interest and grinned. Riku, don't be unfaithful, Shui said, grabbing Riku's sleeve and staring up at him. Hurry up and come in. Sonia stiffened at their banter, then snapped in irritation. Now that was more like her true self. Little bat, didn't expect you to be such a collector. These things are pretty rare nowadays, Jibril said, picking up a plush toy and grinning as Sonia shot her a murderous look. Not bothering with Jibril's comment, Sonia waited until Riku and Shui entered, then quickly shut the door, looking relieved. If her guard saw what was inside this room, her dignity as queen would be ruined. A qualified leader had to maintain proper dignity. Still, this only made all the vampires more curious about what secrets their queen's room held. All of them wanted to sneak a peek so long as they didn't anger Sonia. At that moment, Shui also picked up a plush toy, silently stroking it, looking like she really liked it. Shui, do you like it? Riku asked softly, patting her head. Shui nodded. So even Shui liked plushies and such? That was a good sign. Hearing this, Riku smiled faintly. Lord Riku, I'll give this plushie to Shui as a gift, Sonia said with a trace of reluctance. This plushie was one of her favorites, but since someone close to Riku liked it, she could only give it up to build a relationship. All right, then I'll accept it. Riku nodded. This made Sonia feel a pang of regret, her eyes reflecting a bit of sorrow. But I won't take your things for nothing, take this instead. Riku pulled out a life-sized panda plushie from his storage, handing it to Sonia. As soon as Riku took out the panda plush, Sonia froze, then showed an obvious look of delight and obsession. Seeing this, Riku couldn't help but laugh. So even a vampire queen, who could face both Flugel and Dragonia without changing expression, was helpless against plush toys. This plushie was something he'd drawn from a bronze chest, and he'd thought it was useless, but it actually came in handy here. He glanced at Shui. If she really liked it, maybe he'd find a way to bring more over from other worlds. But Shui just kept stroking her own plushie, not reacting further, so Riku shook his head slightly. Can I really have this? Sonia asked nervously, hugging the giant panda. Of course. A fair trade, Riku said casually with a shrug. Thank you. Sonia's eyes lit up with joy as she sincerely thanked him. Suddenly, she felt Riku wasn't the kind of person to forcefully take things. At the very least, he didn't like owing others. So this is what a favorability event looks like? Master, you're amazing. One move and you've captured this little bat's heart, Jibril teased with a bright smile. Shut up, Jibril. Riku shot her a sharp glare. Sonia stared at Jibril, too. Amid this awkward atmosphere, Riku didn't continue chatting with Sonia. Instead, he started searching the room. Soon, he found a platinum chest at the foot of the bed. Riku sat on the edge of the bed, putting his hand on the chest. Too focused on the chest, he didn't realize he was sitting on 2 pairs of black panties. Sonia's cheeks flushed faintly as she looked at him in embarrassment. At that moment, Riku opened the platinum chest. With the sound of a lock being undone, the platinum chest lit up with dazzling light, and an orb of light emerged. At the same time, a system prompt appeared in Riku's mind. Ding! Congratulations, Master, for opening a platinum chest and obtaining the Beast God's Blood. Beast God's Blood, a special bloodline item for werebeasts. Using it will cause a regression to a primal form, greatly boosting strength and potentially granting a divine spark. Warm reminder, only for use by werebeasts. If used by a human, at best, it'll provide a small strength boost, but may also drive the user insane. Beast God's Blood? That's perfect to give Faya as a gift. Riku's eyes lit up. He'd promised to give Faya the best possible present, and had thought about giving her the Shambhala. But that was a leftover, so it wouldn't be sincere enough. This, though, was truly perfect for Faya. System, what does regression mean here? Does it change your body's appearance? Riku asked seriously. No. It only grants the werebeast special abilities. It might change the body somewhat, but only for the better. I see. Not bad. Riku stroked his chin and nodded in satisfaction. This item was useless for him, but it was the best possible present. Master, did you find something? Jibril noticed Riku's changing expression and asked curiously. Sort of. But it's a secret. Riku grinned. Ah, what a pity. Jibril said, a little disappointed. All she'd seen was Riku sitting and moving his hand. There didn't seem to be anything there at all. She even tried to touch the spot, but it just felt like empty air. Sonia, could I trouble you to summon your creator, the shadow god Gagras? Riku asked Sonia, who was still puzzled. I can. Sonia paused, then nodded. To summon their creator, they would have to perform a blood sacrifice and offer up hundreds of their kin. But since it was Riku's request, she had no choice. Actually, never mind, he's already here. Riku suddenly looked up, as if peering through all obstacles to see something outside. Sonia was shocked. Their creator had already arrived? Jibril, Shui, let's go meet an old deus. It's my first time seeing one at the top of the species hierarchy, Riku said with a small smile. Not counting the god of war. Reginlif might be stronger than most old deus, but she was still a Dragonia. This would be the first time he saw an old deus in person. It's an honor to see the shadow god's true form with you, Master, Jibril said with a smile. Shui just quietly grabbed Riku's sleeve. With a smile, Riku used teleport. Instantly, Riku, Jibril, and Shui disappeared from the room. Flugel's teleport, huh? Convenient ability, Sonia murmured. Her expression soon returned to calm as she put down the panda plush, turned into black mist, and vanished from the room. She hadn't seen her creator in ages. If not for a special link, she might have thought him dead. Outside, Zerlis was exuding a powerful aura, dragon eyes narrowing, staring warily at a sinister being wrapped in black mist, floating in the air 100 meters away. Old Deus. Gagras. Chapter 46. A Dragonia? But you're not the one. Shrouded in shadow, the presence with blood-red eyes fixed its gaze on Zerlis, finally speaking. The voice was low and chilling, making the listener's skin crawl. Even Zerlis, at this moment, was as tense as could be. It's true that Dragonia, with their time compression, can rival weaker old deists. But those are only the newly born conceptual old deists whose power is not yet fully developed. But an old deist who can create a race, none of those are simple, and alone Dragonia could never hope to defeat such a being. Especially the shadow god, Gagras. Perhaps in terms of pure power, Gagras isn't the strongest among the old deists. But when it comes to stealth and assassination, he's absolutely top tier. Are you looking for me, Gagras? Suddenly, 3 figures appeared above Zeralis's head. Riku stepped forward, speaking calmly. Oh? Ex Machina, Flugel, and now Dragonia as well. For a human to command all these. I'm surprised. Gathering so many races and forces, what are you planning? Gagras's blood-red eyes radiated an oppressive aura as he stared down Riku. These days, all the major events shaking the world. They're all related to you, aren't they? Whether it's the Wise Dragon or the Flugel army's movements. How interesting. As expected of the Shadow God when it comes to stealth and perception, maybe no one surpasses you. Riku's eyes shone with interest. Gagras continued to silently stare at Riku, thinking. My lord, you have returned. At this moment, black mist swirled, and Sonia appeared, bowing respectfully. Gagras only gave a small nod to Sonia's greeting, his gaze never leaving Riku. So, what is it you seek from me and my creations? Gagras finally asked, his tone heavy. If I told you my goal is to defeat Artosh, what would you think I've come here to do? Riku's eyes glimmered with deeper meaning. I see. No wonder the Wise Dragon's aura didn't disappear after your battle, you formed an alliance with him. Does that mean you're also here to recruit me and my kin for your alliance? Not at all. Riku raised a finger and flatly denied it. Oh? Why is that? Gagras was finally puzzled, frowning. My battle with the Wise Dragon taught me he's a dragon worthy of trust. But you, I don't trust you. Riku shrugged, not bothering to soften his words. I have no intention of letting some old deist steal my victory after I finally defeat Artosh. I see. Gagras was silent for a moment, then chuckled. That's right, if Riku does manage to defeat Artosh, he definitely won't be in peak condition. If, at that time, Gagras, as an old deist, steps in and interferes, the outcome is unpredictable. As the Shadow God, his stealth is second to none. He could steal the Suniaster and become the final victor. That uncertainty is what Riku came to erase. Below, Sonia's pupils shrank as she listened. So Riku was here to eliminate her creator? She couldn't accept that. So, you're here to destroy me? Still, Gagras didn't flinch, his tone was as calm as ever. At the same time, his aura rose ever higher, and the already gloomy sky began to darken further, as if night itself was falling early. Riku couldn't help but look on with admiration. As expected of the old deists, their presence is overwhelming. I wouldn't call it destroy. I'm just here to remove an unstable factor. Riku replied with total composure. But before that, show me the power of an old deist. Riku's aura sharpened, rising rapidly. Balance breaker. At the same time, Riku's right hand was enveloped in the brilliant red of the boosted gear. As he calmly spoke, a red light wrapped his entire body. He appeared before everyone in his full armor, his aura exploding. But that wasn't all. Fourth gate. Gate of pain, open. With a low shout, a greenish energy flame ignited over Riku's already scarlet aura, his power reaching terrifying new heights. The flow of energy warped the surrounding space, wind howling furiously through the sky. Sonia shuddered instinctively, unable to remain calm as she stared at Riku in shock. She knew Riku was strong and could sense the energy within him, but she hadn't expected it to soar to such a level. He was now fully on par with the old deist, maybe even surpassing her creator. The weakest race, now more powerful than the strongest of the gods? It sounded like nonsense, but the reality was inescapable. In this moment, even Sonia's composure shattered. Then, let's begin. Riku locked eyes with Gagras, voice cold. As Riku's declaration fell, he and Gagras shot toward each other. A mere 100 meters was crossed in less than a 10,000th of a second, and man and god collided. Riku's punch shattered space, pressure and wind exploding outwards. Gagras's black mist condensed into a pitch-black shield, blocking Riku's strike. To Riku's surprise, his destructive punch was stopped so easily. No, absorbed. Interesting. Riku grinned, ramping up his power. Scarlet and green energy burst forth, blowing the black shield apart. At the same time, hundreds of black spikes, forged from Gagras's shadowy aura, shot toward Riku. Riku simply used heavenly teleport to dodge. Meanwhile, Gagras, whose defense had been shattered, was sent flying like a meteor by Riku's attack. First exchange, Riku overwhelmingly defeats old deist Gagras. The speed of the clash between man and god was so great that even Jibril and Zeralis almost couldn't keep up, let alone Sonia. All they felt was a wave of pressure nearly blowing them away. Well, for the weakest present, Sonia, she was already sent flying. Even the canyon below was shaking violently, the vampire residents scrambling in panic. My lord is actually at a disadvantage. Thanks to being farther away and the fact that most of Riku's power was absorbed by the shadows, Sonia was unharmed. She finally stabilized herself and looked up at the calm Riku and her creator, who had apparently been blown away by a punch. She couldn't calm her heart. You should all fall back. Riku, not at all complacent, instead scanned the increasingly dark space with grave seriousness and spoke to Zerlis and the others. Hearing this, Zerlis immediately withdrew tens of kilometers. But whether it was Zerlis, Jibril, or Shui, all their eyes remained fixed on the battlefield. They didn't want to miss a single moment. Such powerful stealth. This is basically a domain of space itself, Riku thought, wary, as he found he couldn't sense any trace of Gagra's shhhhrrkkkkk. Suddenly, the dark space around Riku tore open like tattered cloth. Countless giant shadowy hands lunged at him, enveloping him completely. Rah! Sensing the danger, Riku roared, and blue-red energy exploded from him, shattering the grasping black hands. But in that instant, Gagra's form appeared behind Riku, an overwhelming surge of spiritual power erupting. All the shadows around them twisted and compressed, turning the world pitch black so dark Riku couldn't see a thing, not even with his enhanced sight. From outside, Zerlis and the others stared wide-eyed. The blackness faded from the sky and returned to dusk, but at the center was an enormous area of absolute darkness, a strange, oppressive domain. As expected, old Deus aren't so easy to defeat, Jibril said in awe. The shadow god Gagra's might not have the most destructive power, but his methods of killing were famously bizarre. But if it's Riku, he'll definitely win. Shui hugged her plushie and said this with unwavering faith in her eyes. He is, after all, the one who defeated the wise dragon, murmured Zerlis. Nearby, Sonia stared fixedly at the twisting shadows overhead, her heart far from calm. What's happening in there? Within the world of shadow, Riku could not see his hand in front of his face, all five senses were numb, and even spiritual perception failed. This ability. It's a bit like Kyokusuagetsu, but even more overwhelming in some ways. That technique allows for more manipulation, but this is a realm of crushing pressure and shadow assault that Kyokusuagetsu can't match. This is my trump card, Shadow World. In this realm, I am invincible, Gagra's voice echoed. Even Riku, whose senses far exceeded Fayaz, couldn't perceive where his real body was. Or maybe all the shadows are Gagra's body? Invincible, huh? There's no such thing as true invincibility in this world. Riku chuckled coolly. Every old Deus has their ultimate move, Artasha's Divine Smite, Kanath's Void Zero Protection, or now, Gagra's Shadow World. But to claim invincibility with just one technique is laughable. So let me break your so-called invincible ability. Riku grinned confidently. If you can, then try. But I won't hold back or give you time. Gagra's cold voice rang out, and then the shadows twisted again. Tens of thousands of shadowy spikes shot toward Riku from all directions. In Gagra's domain, faced with such a dense, omnidirectional attack and his senses blocked, Riku could only rely on defense. There was no way to dodge, only to endure. Clang. 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 A storm of sharp impacts and flying sparks filled the darkness. Each hit was not especially strong, but their number was overwhelming. Even the toughest opponent could be worn down by sheer attrition. There are many ways to break your domain. The simplest is brute force. Use overwhelming power to burst your world apart, Riku said calmly as he blocked. But from what I can tell, it would take an attack like the wise dragon's collapse howl to shatter your domain. Not exactly efficient. Second way, use a more advanced spatial ability to transfer out. But that's not really possible. My only spatial move is Heavenly Teleport, and in here, even that won't work. Third option, locate the spatial node of this domain and break it. Riku spoke slowly and evenly. Your space involves advanced spatial law, but it's not perfect? Hidden in the shadows, the shadow god Gagra's paused his attacks, shocked. This human could analyze so much in just 1 minute. As for other methods, I haven't thought of them yet. Riku's golden eyes glimmered. But I'd like to test a special method to break your domain. Interesting, human. If you can do it, go ahead. Gagra's responded solemnly, then unleashed another attack. Raising an energy barrier to block, Riku slowly opened his mouth and began to chant a spell he hadn't used in ages. I am the bone of my sword, steel is my body, and fire is my blood. I have created over 1,000 blades unknown to death, nor known to life. Have withstood pain to create many weapons, yet those hands will never hold anything. So as I pray, unlimited blade works. As the strange chant sounded, a powerful spatial ripple surged forth, causing Gagra's blood-red eyes to tremble. Then, the field of vision shifted. Looking around, Riku saw endless red sands beneath a glowing sky, and in the distance, dragon-like shapes soared and roared above. Unlimited Blade Works was a world shaped by the caster's heart. Now, the world it manifested was nothing like when Riku first used it. Its strength, density, and control were all leagues above his fight with Drumroll. After all, Riku's power now far surpassed back then, and he was fighting while using both the boosted gear's balance breaker and the fourth gate simultaneously. Where is this? Gagras glanced around in surprise. A special dimension conjured by magic? Strictly speaking, it's sorcery different from magic, Riku said with a faint smile, calmly explaining. As he spoke, Riku's figure disappeared from within the shadowy realm, reappearing in the sky outside the domain. Sorcery. I didn't expect you could escape my domain so easily. The black region rippled, then shrank and condensed into Gagras's humanoid form. He shook his head. If your domain is attached to the existing space, then I can transfer that entire region into my world. Here, I am the master, breaking your domain is child's play. Riku's voice was light, almost teasing. With his current strength, he could do what even Namiya and Archer couldn't. He'd even improved the technique a bit. So? Want to keep fighting? Riku gently raised a hand. The countless projection swords buried in the sand all rose up, their tips flashing with lethal, chaotic energy, all pointed at Gagras. I concede. After a pause, Gagras shook his head and withdrew his power. A wise choice. Riku nodded with satisfaction. After all, if an assassin is forced into a fair fight with a warrior of equal rank, it's basically over. The outcome is inevitable. Since you said you weren't here to kill me, but to eliminate a threat, your goal must be to seal my divine core, putting me into slumber, right? Gagras looked at Riku calmly. It's easy to talk with a smart god. Yes, that's exactly my goal. Riku shrugged, readily admitting it. I see. In a moment, I'll seal my divine core. If you want, you can add an extra lock, just to be safe, Gagras replied, still composed. But I have a condition, let them join your alliance too. Sure. Riku looked at Gagras in mild surprise, then nodded. That was my intention all along. He hadn't expected this old deus to care so much about the race he created. Thank you. Gagras bowed slightly. His vampires might be excellent at hiding, but they'd be little help in the coming war with the Artosh. For Riku to allow his race into the alliance was already a huge favor. Outside, Zuralis, Drumroll, Shui, and Sonia all stared blankly at the suddenly vanished shadow domain, as well as the missing figures of Riku and the old deus, not understanding what had happened. Of course, in Drumroll's mind, there was a fleeting flash of the small world Riku had once used against her, but she dismissed the idea. The strength of that world could never achieve this. A minute later, two figures appeared in the air, facing each other, making all the girls present look dumbfounded. Neither showed any sign of injury, it was as if nothing at all had happened. Did you win, my lord? Sonia fixed her eyes on her creator, struggling to keep calm. Riku's power earlier had been terrifying, even she, who had complete faith in her creator, felt unsure. I lost. Gagras gave Sonia a glance and said this calmly. Hearing those words was like being struck by lightning. Sonia's face changed, and she stared in shock at the unfazed Riku. Yeah, as expected of my master, he actually made the shadow god admit defeat. Drumroll's voice was full of adoration. Riku will never lose, Shui said with certainty. Zuralis just shook her head. She'd seen too many miracles and impossibilities at this point. For Riku to lose here, before even challenging Artosh, would actually be stranger. Sonia, from today on, you're Riku's retainer. Also, the management of the vampires is now his responsibility. Gagras looked down at Sonia and said quietly. At that, Sonia's crimson eyes contracted, and she finally looked truly shaken. My lord. What about you? Sonia's voice trembled. I will seal my divine core and go into slumber. Once it's all over, I'll awaken again. Gagras gazed up at the darkening sky. Artosh, perhaps this war of the gods will truly be ended by the humans we overlooked. Maybe, you, the greatest of all gods, will finally be defeated by the weakest race. I understand. Sonia glanced at Riku, then respectfully nodded. She didn't resent him, in fact, he'd earned her respect. He could have killed their creator, but he hadn't. That, and her creator's decision, made her accept it. Another retainer. Gagras, I guess you did me a favor after all. Riku and Sonia exchanged glances. Deep down, Riku was slightly moved by Sonia, the vampire queen. He hadn't expected Gagras to help him out like this. Yeah, master, now even the vampire queen is joining your harem. Are you really going to keep denying that you're building a harem of every race? Drumroll immediately teleported to Riku's side with a wicked grin. Shut up, Drumroll. Riku rolled his eyes and flicked her on the forehead. Thinking about it was one thing, but saying it out loud was another. And anyway, he really didn't plan on a full race harem. There were some races he definitely wasn't interested in. He only wanted people he genuinely liked, not just to collect them all. Riku, another woman, Shui said, sounding jealous. All the chatter made Sonia's eyes twitch. Was she just dragged onto a pirate ship? Still, if it's with a man who might become the one true god, maybe that wasn't so bad. Sonia glanced at Riku, her thoughts running wild. Despite being the cold, proud queen of the vampires, she often fantasized about things like this and, aside from the difference in species, Riku seemed to fit her ideal in every way. Chapter 47. In the end, the old deus Gagras sealed his divine core, and Jaiberl even added several of her own seals. The divine core is the very heart of an old deus. If the Artosh had his core extracted, he would die all the same. With Jaiberl's seals added, Gagras fell into complete slumber. Whether he ever awakens will depend on Riku's decision. Compared to being destroyed, eternal slumber was the best possible outcome. Afterwards, Sonia announced to all the vampires that Riku would be their new leader. No one objected after all, this was the will of their creator, and they could only obey. Even if any were dissatisfied, they could only swallow it. Riku was the one who defeated their creator. Anyone thinking of resisting had better think twice about their own strength first. Master, could I please suck a little of your blood? Just a tiny bit. Sonia hesitated as Riku prepared to leave, but in the end, she couldn't help asking. Little bat, are you getting greedy the moment you become Master's retainer? Jaiberl remarked meaningfully. For vampires, the quality of the blood they drink determines their power. If a vampire regularly consumes a strong person's blood, they can grow very powerful. On the other hand, feeding on ordinary humans or just sweat will make them abnormally weak. That's not what I mean. It's just, as your retainer, it's better if we have a special contract. Sonia explained calmly, noticing Jaiberl and Shui watching her with sharp eyes. I see. So, where do you want to bite? Riku nodded and asked. He didn't plan to use a contract card on Sonia. While vampire powers are useful, they don't meet his standards. Finger is fine. Sonia met Riku's eyes directly, making it clear she had no other motives. All right. Riku stretched out his index finger and relaxed as much as he could. His body was so tough that if he didn't intentionally lower his guard, even a vampire's fangs would have trouble piercing his skin. Bite. Focusing on his finger, Sonia's cheeks flushed pink. She took Riku's hand in both of hers, opened her mouth, revealed her sharp little fangs, and gently bit into his finger, sucking his blood. Apparently, Riku's blood quality was extremely high. Even with Sonia's willpower, her face turned crimson as she instinctively showed a look of enjoyment. You could say. This was pretty suggestive. Watching Sonia's blissful face, Riku's eyes flashed with emotion. Still, fang bite ding, Sonia's bite somehow felt even more. Riku's mind was suddenly filled with odd images, and he hurriedly stopped himself from imagining any further. At that moment, a small blood-red magic circle appeared, establishing a strange connection between Riku and Sonia. It was almost like a blood contract, but Riku held the dominant position. Sonia's life and death now depended on his will, and she couldn't resist any order from him without suffering unbearable pain. Such determination. Admiring the girl before him, Riku shook his head slightly. Thank you for your gift, Master. Sonia stepped back, her cheeks still red after feeding on Riku's high-quality blood. She was noticeably stronger, and she bowed respectfully. Riku glanced at his now wet finger, a strange expression on his face. Already getting Master's favor the moment you become a retainer? I've never even gotten to interact with Master like that. Jaiberl suddenly cut in. Ahem. Well, Sonia, we'll be going now. I'll call on you if I need you. Riku shook his head and took his leave. Safe travels, Master. Sonia bowed slightly. Riku nodded, then teleported the three of them back to Zerlis's back, and with another use of teleport, they instantly vanished from that place. To serve Master for life, huh? Sonia returned to her room, hugged her panda plushie, and murmured absent-mindedly. Elsewhere, high above the Were-Beast village, a human, a dragon, a fleagle, and an ex-machina suddenly appeared, startling all the Were-Beasts. Especially Zerlis, her overwhelming presence almost made the Were-Beast leap out of their fur. After all, they didn't know about Riku's dealings with the dragons. But when they saw Riku, Jaiberl, and Shui, they were stunned, then ecstatic. It was clear their Lord Riku had once again subdued a Tropter race. Dragonia, no less. An existence even above the fleagle. Leaving a rather gloomy Zerlis behind, Riku, Jaiberl, and Shui teleported back to their room. Husband, did you succeed? The moment Riku appeared, Fi hugged him tightly around the waist, her voice filled with joy. Of course. If I make a move, it's guaranteed. Riku patted Faya's head, grinning. Hee hee, little one, Master didn't just win over the Dragonia, he beat Regenlif too. And then made the old Deuscagras willingly seal his own divine core, taking command of the vampires too. Drumroll listed Riku's achievements with a mischievous smile. Husband. Hearing this, Faya's eyes went wide with disbelief as she stared at Riku. This was just too terrifying. In such a short time, he'd defeated even Regenlif and an old Deus. She'd always known her man was strong, but this was on another level. Even Fink, who was serving tea on the side, nearly dropped the teapot. She too was left speechless by Riku's progress. She had already accepted that Riku was a monster in human skin, but she never thought he'd reach the point of beating an old Deus. Not even in her wildest dreams. I did have to put in a lot of effort. It wasn't as easy as Drumroll makes it sound. Riku rubbed his face and shook his head. Husband, I suddenly feel unworthy of you. Faya let go of Riku, happiness and worry mingling on her face. Once, they'd been equals, but in less than half a month, Riku had grown strong enough to defeat Regenlif and an old Deus, while she'd barely improved at all. What's with all the silly thoughts? Faya's Faya the girl I love, and that's enough, Riku said seriously as he stroked Faya's head. From now on, don't overthink things. Or else you'll face the family rules. Okay. Hearing this, Faya wagged her tail and nodded slowly, her face turning red at the mention of family rules. Family rules sounded like a death sentence, but actually. Oh, Faya, I have 2 things to give you. Riku suddenly remembered and smiled. Faya tilted her head in confusion, but even though she didn't know what Riku would give her, her heart was filled with happiness. Drumroll also looked at Riku with curiosity. This is Shambhala, a space-type item. Riku first took out Shambhala from his storage and explained its function and usage. Now that he had Drumroll's Heaven's Step, this item was no longer of much use to him. But even so, it was a precious spatial artifact with high value, and giving it to Faya was a great choice. So the Master's previous space ability was actually with this item. Drumroll was the first to react, staring at the small formation in Riku's hand with curiosity. Shui wasn't surprised, she'd known all along. As for Thinknervalen, she watched in silence, her eyes fluctuating as she stared at Riku. A space-type item being given away so easily? Riku, I can't accept this. It's the most useful thing for you, Faya said, moved but also serious. Don't worry about it. I already have a better space ability, so just accept it. Otherwise, I'll have to throw it away. Riku shook his head and stroked Faya's head gently. This girl always put him first, no matter what. If that's the case, then I'll accept it. Faya hesitated for a moment before taking Shambhala, her face flushing red. She decided that tonight, she would let Riku do as he pleased. Even those things that used to be too embarrassing, she'd try to endure. After all, her husband was so good to her, she couldn't refuse anymore. And finally, here's your wedding gift. Riku suddenly grinned confidently. Huh? Isn't this it? Faya returned from her daydream and said dazedly. This is good, but as a wedding present, it feels a bit lacking in sincerity. Riku replied seriously. I promise to prepare the most suitable gift for you. So, take this. Riku took out a glass vial from his storage space. Inside was a deep red liquid, exuding a powerful aura. The moment Riku took out the item, Faya's eyes were glued to it, and her body instinctively entered bloodlust mode, as if she was about to snatch it away. Then Faya shuddered and snapped out of it. She looked at Riku in a panic and quickly explained, Riku, I just... No need to explain. I understand, Riku gently stroked Faya's head. This was Beast God's blood. He didn't know which beast god it came from, but it was definitely not an ordinary item. As a were beast, Faya being instinctively drawn to it was only natural. In fact, the fact that she could snap out of it so quickly and was so afraid of misunderstanding made Riku feel touched. Master, what is this thing? Even the little pup almost attacked you for it, Drumroll asked, eyes full of curiosity, staring at the vial. You could say it's a high-grade bloodline that helps were beasts evolve, Riku explained after a moment. To call it a beast god was a bit awkward, as it wasn't from this world's pantheon. I see. Drumroll and Thinknervalen both looked enlightened. No wonder Faya, who always put Riku first, had reacted that way. Especially Thinknervalen, she could relate. Just a word of disrespect toward a human, and Faya had nearly killed her. Riku, this is too precious. Faya said, full of internal conflict. She wanted it, but didn't want to waste resources. Riku chuckled and flicked her on the forehead, making her reflexively cover her head and look at him pitifully. Seriously, I told you, don't overthink things. Riku smiled. This is useless for anyone but a were beast. That's why it's the perfect gift for you. Thank you, Riku. Faya's face turned even redder. Tonight, I'll serve you well. I'll satisfy any request, she whispered in Riku's ear, face burning, voice as soft as a mosquito's. She couldn't help in other ways for now, so this was all she could do to express her feelings. Hey, that's a promise, Riku's eyes sparkled in anticipation. Now, master, what are you two whispering about? Drumroll teased. Can I join in? Her words startled Faya, who quickly backed away. She'd forgotten there were other girls here and had just done something so intimate. But before that, master, aren't you going to give me a present? Isn't it unfair otherwise? Drumroll purposely put on a resentful look, staring at Riku. Don't worry, the perfect gift for you is coming soon. Riku raised an eyebrow, giving her a meaningful smile. Drumroll always made trouble, she needed some discipline. Drumroll laughed awkwardly. As for Shui, she just hugged her plush toy tightly. She'd already received her present. Nervalin, for her part, quietly watched the others and felt a hint of envy. Faya, drink this, Riku said, handing the vial over. Okay. Faya's expression became serious, all her embarrassment gone. As Faya drank the beast god's blood, a surge of wild energy exploded from her body. Her blue hair instantly turned blood red, and red markings appeared all over her body. She had entered the bloodlust state. Feeling Faya's increasingly intense aura, Riku exchanged a glance with Drumroll. In the next moment, Drumroll immediately understood Riku's intention and cast a barrier, enveloping Faya inside. If they didn't do something, the entire house might collapse. As time passed, Faya's aura grew so strong that even if legal couldn't compare. But after reaching a certain point, it finally stabilized, as if her body was being transformed. Watching this, Drumroll was full of amazement. It was truly hard to imagine a were beast reaching such a level. But with Riku's help, Faya had completely shattered the limitations that had bound her race for so long. As expected of Master, Drumroll murmured, glancing at Riku beside her. On the other side, Shui's eyes sparkled not with envy but determination. She was determined to become the Ex Machina's acting commander. Meanwhile, Nervalin had fallen completely silent. Faya's transformation filled her with envy. Maybe if she'd had a better attitude at first, she could have entered his heart without any barriers. Nervalin sighed to herself. Her pride had ruined things. Far above, Nervalin watched the house with surprise. Although she was shocked that a were beast could achieve this level, when she remembered that Riku was inside, her surprise faded, replaced by simple curiosity. Looks like it'll take quite a while, Riku observed, watching Faya's transformation carefully. This was a slow process of bloodline enhancement, not something that would be finished quickly. It would take days for her to fully absorb and complete her transformation. It seemed that tonight, his hopes of continuing to develop Faya's positions would have to wait. Still, Riku wasn't worried. With Faya's personality, once she said something, she would never go back on her word. Riku, I have something to discuss with you, Shui suddenly said. What is it? Riku was a little surprised, turning to look at Shui. It was his first time seeing Shui actively wanting to discuss something. I want to leave for a while, Shui said quietly, but her tone was firm. Why? Riku frowned, looking serious. I want to return to the Ex Machina and become the acting commander, Shui said, meeting Riku's gaze. That way, I can really help you. Her words moved Riku. He opened his mouth but said nothing because the determination in Shui's eyes was unmistakable, nothing like her emotionless past self. Shui knows Riku wants to act together, but Shui also wants to become stronger, not just rely on Riku for everything, Shui said again. I understand. But don't do anything reckless. If you run into trouble, you have to tell me, Riku said at last, patting her head. I will, Shui smiled a rare, truly human smile and nodded firmly. Then, I'll go, Shui said, and then used her spatial ability to disappear from the room. Master, is Shui really an Ex Machina? Drumroll finally couldn't hold back her curiosity. The Ex Machina had bug-level abilities, but their entire race only ever acted defensively, unless provoked, and always acted as a collective, without personal will. Yet Shui's actions kept breaking Drumroll's understanding. Now, it was even more so. Of course, she's Ex Machina. But Shui already has a complete heart, Riku said, gazing up at the sky. A heart, huh? Drumroll murmured thoughtfully. Anyway, I'm going to take a bath. Riku shook his head and stood up. With Faya transforming and Shui leaving to help him, things had suddenly gotten a bit lonely. Master, let me serve you, Nervalin suddenly said, rising to her feet. Okay, Riku replied, giving Nervalin a slightly odd look. He had never really felt much for her, mainly because she'd never had a servant's awareness. Still, he didn't overthink it and just nodded. Oh my, Drumroll said, also glancing oddly at Nervalin. When did this proud elf get so obedient? Had Master finally tamed her? The two of them left for the hot springs. Along the way, Thinknervalen seemed very conflicted. This time, she was very diligent. Although clumsy, she did things like help Riku scrub his back quite seriously. After cleaning up, the two soaked in the hot springs. Thinknervalen noticed Riku wasn't even looking at her, he just closed his eyes as if lost in thought. She felt a faint sense of grievance. No matter what, she wasn't any less attractive than the other girls. In fact, she was quite well endowed, so why did he ignore her? Did she really have no charm? But then, Thinknervalen froze. Was she really thinking like this? Yearning to be someone important to him. "Master, I have a request," she said after a deep breath, her voice respectful. "What is it?" Riku opened his eyes, his tone calm. "I want to go back and lead the elves," Thinknervalen said, biting her lip, nervously. "At the moment, the elves are of little use in the coming war against the old dais. If we can create a few more Void Zero barriers, we could be much more helpful. But only I can guide the creation of those." "Of course," Riku nodded calmly. "Thank you for trusting me, Master." Thinknervalen was stunned for a moment, then happily bowed. "When do you plan to leave?" Riku asked. "The day after tomorrow," Thinknervalen said, a bit nervously. Her face flushed as she said quietly, "Because before I go, I want to serve Master properly." That made Riku finally look at her properly. This proud elf, when did she develop such awareness? She'd even considered the difference in their physical abilities. With the difference between them, if they actually did that, especially since it'd be her first time, Thinknervalen wouldn't be able to get out of bed for a day, even with healing magic. So she'd scheduled her departure for the day after tomorrow, to give herself a date to recover. Riku instantly understood. All right. At this point, Riku had no reason to refuse, especially with Shui gone and Fia transforming. He was feeling a bit bored. "Thank you for your favor, Master," Thinknervalen whispered as she moved closer, resting on Riku's shoulder. "It's my first time, please be gentle." Riku's lips curled in a smile, and he took action. In an instant, the hot spring splashed and echoed with waves and melodies of another kind. 8 hours after soaking in the hot spring, Thinknervalen's weak pleas for mercy echoed through the air. To be honest, she was on the verge of breaking down. At first, it was painful, but soon became overwhelmingly pleasurable, to the point she became addicted. After several hours, following one climax after another, things went downhill fast. Her entire body felt hot and raw, and she simply couldn't take it anymore. Now, she was completely exhausted. Their difference in physical constitution was just on a whole different level. Because of this, Riku could only reluctantly stop and let Think go. Life really is as lonely as snow, Riku sighed, watching Think stagger away in her kimono, clinging to the wall with shaky steps. With his current constitution, even Fia would be no match for him, at least before her transformation was complete. He actually looked forward to seeing if the new Fia would be able to go toe-to-toe with him. As for Thinknervalen, after what happened, she probably wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Whether she'd be able to leave on schedule tomorrow was up in the air. And why tomorrow? Well, because it was already close to 2 in the morning. After all, their battle had lasted 8 hours. Well, soaking in the hot spring alone is pointless anyway. "I've had enough," Riku said, toweling off and summoning a fresh kimono. "Next time, maybe I should try this special hot spring experience with Fia, too," he thought with satisfaction, humming as he made his way back to his bedroom. However, when he entered, he found someone already waiting for him, and his eyebrows rose in surprise. "Jibril, what are you doing here so late?" Riku asked, staring at her. "I was just curious, Master, why does it take you so long to bathe with your maid in the hot spring?" Jibril's bright eyes sparkled mischievously as she spoke. "Master, you promised to give me the present I wanted most, remember?" "You should already know what it is," Jibril said, her voice dreamy, eyes filled with longing. "Now that I'm back to normal, you can do whatever you want to me." "Jibril, you really do need to be disciplined," Riku said, smirking as he reached out to stroke her wings. "But Master, isn't that just the way you like me?" Jibril replied confidently. "I should have prepared more toys," Riku said regretfully. A maid who likes to reveal her master's thoughts must be properly disciplined, after all. I'm looking forward to it." Jibril tilted her head, her expression still playful. "Actually, what I'm most curious about is whether Fleugel can even get pregnant," Riku said with a wicked smile. "That's a good question. After all, we Fleugel don't have males, and we've never reproduced with other species," Jibril said, tapping her cheek thoughtfully. "So, Master, would you like to try and see if it's possible?" "Hey, so bold, Jibril. You're going to regret teasing me," Riku said with a laugh, pulling her close. The rest needed no words, their music played on deep into the night. The next day, at noon, Riku lay alone on the rooftop, staring at the dim, blood-red sky, feeling a little bored. And why? Because Faya was still in the midst of her transformation. Think and Jibril were both resting, Shui had left, and Zeralis had gone out exploring. After all, staying in the air all the time was boring, so Riku gave her some time off. It suddenly felt quiet again. Of course, Riku had also gone to check on Kura, adding a few more defensive barriers to the human settlement, so there was no need to worry about their safety. A while later, an elderly were-beast appeared on the roof, bowing respectfully to Riku. Lord Riku, there's news from the dwarf race. Regarding the alliance, the dwarves would like to meet with you face to face. Looks like I finally have something to do. I almost forgot about the dwarves, Riku muttered as he stood, stroking his chin. He'd been so busy lately, he almost forgot his original goal. They want a face-to-face meeting? That's fine, Riku nodded. The dwarves had a platinum chest he wanted, so now was as good a time as any. Understood. I'll take my leave. Please rest assured, I won't let anyone approach Faya. If anyone tries, I won't let them off lightly, no matter who they are, the elder said nervously. Although Jibril had set up multiple barriers, you could never be too careful. I understand, the elder replied, shivering under Riku's gaze. How could he possibly disturb Faya? It was obvious she was in the midst of a transformation, thanks to Riku's help, growing ever stronger. Good, Riku said with a wave, disappearing from the rooftop with heavenly shift. Lord Riku is getting scarier and scarier. It's a good thing we had that duel. If not for Princess Faya's marriage to Lord Riku, our people wouldn't have things so good now, the elder said, wiping away imaginary sweat, sighing in relief. Meanwhile, out on her stroll, Zeralis suddenly felt a presence land on her back, prompting her to instinctively release her aura before realizing who it was and reining it in. Lord Riku, don't suddenly appear on my back like that, you'll scare a dragon. Zeralis said with a huff. Sorry. I need you to take me to the dwarves, Riku said, waving away the apology before getting to the point. Dwarves? Understood, Zeralis replied, surprised for a moment before nodding. With that, she carried Riku as they soared towards the dwarf territory. Along the way, Riku collected 3 more chests, 1 bronze, 1 silver, and 1 gold. The bronze chest yielded a bad luck talisman, which was useless to Riku now, though it might be fun for pranks. The silver chest contained blueprints for a mecha, based on the Is-World's design, but improved. This gave Riku some ideas. The gold chest, however, gave him a new ability, super regeneration. For a gold tier reward, it was an outstanding power, something that would make an ordinary person nearly impossible to kill, and for Riku, it was a key to an even greater boost in power. Chapter 48. As Riku lounged leisurely atop Zeralis's back, the dwarven capital was bustling with activity. The technological level of the dwarves was, without a doubt, among the highest. Countless airborne warships floated in the skies, painting a picture straight out of a futuristic Earth. Below, nestled among the mountains, was a city of steel, its walls and borders protected and concealed by special energy barriers. At this moment, within one of the dwarves' flying warships, a uniformed dwarf was entertaining the elder from the Were-Beast tribe. The Were-Beasts had originally been dispatched by Riku to gather intelligence on the dwarves. But with Riku's meteoric rise in power, their previous plans were scrapped and replaced by a direct attempt at recruitment. This, of course, was suggested by the Were-Beast chieftain, and Riku hadn't minded, just nodding his approval. Edgar, when is Lord Riku expected to visit? The dwarven commander glanced across at the Were-Beast elder and asked in a gentle tone. At first, the dwarves had looked down on the Were-Beasts, even considering capturing them to extract information. But after hearing Elder Edgar's stories about Riku, they'd reconsidered. Because all the recent major events matched exactly what Edgar described. Their high-tech surveillance had confirmed it. If what Edgar said was true, then their location could be found out by special means and worse, the one who had defeated the wise dragon. So, they were forced to swallow their pride and properly host the Were-Beast envoy. Otherwise, their own destruction was only a matter of time. No need to worry, Commander. Lord Riku will be here soon, Edgar replied with a smile. The dwarven warlord, DeWitt, nodded in deep thought. How could such an anomalous human appear in such a short span of time? Suddenly. Commander. Powerful spirit energy detected 100,000 meters to the east. 90% probability, White Dragon. A dwarf soldier rushed in, flustered. The White Dragon is flying straight for us. Another soldier added gravely. What? The White Dragon? The commander's expression changed, growing grim. Damn it, prepare for battle. Stall for time, begin evacuation. The command was given, and the dwarves sprang into action. Dozens of warships in the sky hummed with gathering power, their cannons glowing brightly. W8. Hold on. It was only now that the Were-Beast elder, Edgar, realized what was happening. He quickly rose to speak up. Although Riku hadn't said it directly, the Were-Beasts suspected he'd brought the White Dragon into the alliance as well. Now Edgar regretted not warning the dwarves sooner. He'd wanted to let Riku announce the alliance himself, as the leader. But it was too late, the dwarves were already in full battle mode. Lord Riku, the dwarves certainly are enthusiastic, Zerulus remarked, eyeing the metal lumps gathering energy in the sky with obvious irritation. Huh? Maybe you just scared them. For a lower race, only the Ex Machina can stay calm in front of a dragon, Riku replied, still relaxed. But being targeted like this is quite unpleasant. Zerulus growled. Lord Riku, allow me to give them a little lesson. No need for that. If you're not careful, you might accidentally kill their leader. I'll handle the teaching myself, Riku said calmly, standing on Zerulus's head. Since Riku-sama says so, I'll hold back. Zerulus nodded. Suddenly, a barrage of lasers from over a dozen airships shot toward them, piercing the sky. Zerulus blocked the attack with a word of draconic power, easily neutralizing the beams. It didn't work. Keep firing. Hold out as long as you can. The dwarven commander gave the order. Wait, damn it. That's Lord Riku's retainer, Lady Zerulus. Lord Riku is here. The Were-Beast elder, Edgar, was so frantic that he entered his blood destruction form, roaring with all his might. The sonic wave left everyone clutching their ears, but there was no trace of dissatisfaction, only shock and confusion. Edgar, what did you just say? Even the dwarven commander was shaken. I said, Lord Riku is here. That white dragon is his retainer, Lady Zerulus. Edgar shouted again. If they angered Riku, he could wipe out the entire city, and Edgar didn't want to die along with them. Stop, stop, stop. Realizing what was happening, the dwarven commander panicked, his roar echoing throughout the city and across every warship, leaving the dwarves dumbstruck. The commander felt like crying. To think they'd greet the man who could slay gods with a full barrage on arrival. This was suicide. Lord Riku, it seems they're still thinking about attacking, Zerulus muttered, still radiating killing intent. Looks like they stopped, Riku said, noticing the warships powering down. Lord Riku, please forgive our rudeness. We were startled and panicked, it was entirely the dwarves' fault. We're willing to apologize and make amends, and we beg for your forgiveness. The dwarven commander's voice came through a special communicator, trembling with sincerity and terror. They were terrified of angering Riku, the one who could defeat even a god. Their secret weapons might threaten a normal god, but would probably be useless here, especially against someone with spatial abilities. So if they used their trump cards, it would only dig their own grave. And besides, they were actually very interested in joining the alliance. Zerulus, wait here for me. I'll be back soon, Riku said calmly. With that, Riku walked into the air toward the floating warships. Why walk instead of using Heavenly Shift? Naturally, it was to give the dwarves a little time. I really need to find an opportunity to discuss transformation magic with Lord Reginlef. Always having to just wait around like this is kind of frustrating. Zerulus watched Riku's figure leave, sighing helplessly. Meanwhile, the dwarf chief was in a complete panic, shouting orders for the dwarves to prepare the welcoming ceremony. Soon, all defenses of the dwarven steel city were withdrawn, and the dwarf chief personally piloted a flying device with several trusted aides to meet Riku. Lord Riku, you've arrived. About what just happened, it was terribly rude of us. The dwarf chief greeted Riku with a bow, nervous and apologetic. About that matter, Riku interrupted indifferently, can we find a place to talk first? Of course, the dwarf chief answered, startled, then quickly forced a smile. The dwarf chief completely lowered himself and began leading the way for Riku. At the same time, the Were-Beast elder Edgar, leading the Were-Beast delegation, also came over to Riku's side. Their eyes were blazing with fervor and reverence as they bowed to Riku. Riku gave them a slight nod in response. Shortly after, Riku was led to a technologically advanced meeting room. As for the platinum chest, Riku wasn't in a hurry, he couldn't run away, after all. Lord Riku, regarding the alliance, our dwarves are willing to join, the dwarf chief said, having seemingly made up his mind after Riku sat down and started tapping on the table. Oh? Riku responded with a faint, ambiguous smile. After the alliance, our dwarves have only one request, we beg Lord Riku, should you win, to spare our race, the dwarf chief pleaded. You're quite clever, knowing your place, Riku said, looking at the dwarf chief with meaning. But you agreed so quickly, honestly, I'm surprised. That made the dwarf chief smile bitterly. Did they have a choice? Now that Riku had his sights set on them and everything was exposed under his gaze, refusing would mean extinction, or at best, a handful of survivors barely clinging to life. The consequences would be too severe. And besides, The dwarves hated the war god Artosh just as much. Their creator had been killed by Artosh, and his divinity was consumed in a blood feud. Before, they had no chance for revenge. Now, Riku represented their best hope, so there was no reason to refuse. Originally, the dwarf chief had planned to fight for more benefits. But after that earlier incident, he had no guts to make demands. He was content just to secure the basics. From Riku's attitude, he could see this was not a man to negotiate with lightly. These sorts of negotiations could fall apart over profit at any moment. Besides, with no real bargaining position, the dwarf chief wisely chose not to court disaster. Our dwarves believe Lord Riku will succeed in slaying the war god, the dwarf chief said, piling on the flattery. Hey, enough with the flattery. Right now, I want to know how many core bombs you have made? Riku asked casually, as if discussing the weather. The dwarf chief and his aides all froze, terror flashing across their faces. Impossible. How could their top secret weapon be exposed like this? The core bomb was the dwarves' most closely guarded secret, a weapon they believed could even kill a dragon if hit directly. Yet here was Riku, speaking of it so lightly. It was terrifying. Gulp. The dwarf chief involuntarily swallowed, staring at Riku in shock and awe. Standing behind Riku, the werebeast elder Edgar was delighted inside. Ha, he'd once been scared speechless by Riku himself. Now it was the dwarves' turn. As expected of Lord Riku, he always seemed to know everything, though no one knew where he got his intelligence. Edgar could only marvel. Currently, we've produced 5. Due to the massive resource cost and the need for secrecy, we've only managed this many, the dwarf chief replied carefully. He didn't dare lie, afraid Riku would turn hostile. He was even afraid to meet Riku's golden eyes. He felt as if every secret was bared before those eyes. Even more, simply sitting there, he found it hard to breathe. He knew that feeling well. It was the feeling of an underling facing a superior. He'd seen it in the eyes of dwarf soldiers when they looked at him. Now, the tables had turned. Still, he dared not feel any resentment. He could only put himself in his place. This was a man who, with a human's body, could fight gods, a being far beyond the dwarf chief's understanding. 5, huh? That's a little low, Riku said, tapping the table and raising an eyebrow. He wasn't about to underestimate Artosh, so he would make use of every power available to raise his chances as high as possible. This wasn't just about his own life, it was about his women and the fate of many races. Lord Riku, I'm not lying. That's truly all we have, and it's taken years of accumulation to reach even that, the dwarf chief said anxiously. I know. No need to panic, Riku waved a hand dismissively. I'll give you 3 months, make 5 more for me. I'll have the werebeasts, elves, and vampires cooperate with you to gather resources. The dwarf chief was stunned, staring in disbelief. He knew the werebeasts had fallen under Riku's command, but since when had the elves and vampires also joined? Not to mention the dragons. At that thought, his mind was in turmoil. Thank you for your generosity, Lord Riku, the dwarf chief said, bowing low. With help from 3 races, we will definitely complete the task within 3 months. Good, Riku nodded, saying nothing more. With 4 races working together, if they still couldn't manage, they'd truly be hopeless. The dwarves had all the technology, they just lacked resources. Finally, I'd like your dwarves to help me develop this, Riku said, pulling out the improved mecha design from his inventory, smiling. Chapter 49. What's this? The dwarf chief looked over the blueprint Riku handed him and instantly understood. A design for a mechanical weapon. Riku nodded calmly. This kind of is-type mecha would probably only be useful for bullying regular demonia and such in this world, frankly, not very useful. However, this was a system-improved version, powered by spirit energy, with the ability to absorb solar energy for storage. It could also evolve based on the pilot's will. Its potential wasn't bad. While it might not match the upper races, it would definitely be a match for the lower ones. Even just making these would bolster humanity's foundations, or Riku could keep them as collectibles. This is amazing. The dwarf chief's eyes were blazing as he stared at the blueprint. Before, their military forces had relied mainly on warships, while they had some personal weaponry, it was relatively weak. Now, this blueprint broadened their horizons. With this as a reference, they'd be able to build even stronger weapons in the future. Just imagining their soldiers piloting these mecha excited the dwarf chief. Of course, Riku had already anticipated the dwarves' thinking, but he wasn't worried. With his current strength, if the dwarves tried anything, it'd be suicide. Besides, once he became the one true god, the whole world would be in his grasp, and no one would dare defy him. The reason he gave the blueprints so easily was because he wanted humanity to come and learn technology from the dwarves, to elevate their own science and technology. Please rest assured, Lord Riku. We'll develop these mecha as quickly as possible. The dwarf chief promised, burning with scientific passion. Every dwarf was crazy about research, and getting something this mind-opening was the greatest of gifts. As for rebelling against Rekka with their new weapons, the dwarves weren't foolish enough to think a single mecha could overturn the world. Riku just nodded slightly at the dwarf chief's promise. After discussing a few other matters, Riku was about to look for the platinum chest. With dwarven technology, communication between races would become trivially easy. Why not rely on the Ex Machina? Because their race was far too special, and besides, that problem hadn't been resolved yet. I wonder how Shui is doing now, Riku murmured, gazing at the sky. Shui had always held a special place in his heart. No matter what, she was irreplaceable. I hope she doesn't do anything reckless, Riku sighed. He wanted the Ex Machina's power, but if it came at the cost of Shui being hurt, he'd rather do without. Before long, Riku found the platinum chest in a secret room. Looking at the chest, Riku shook his head slightly and placed his hand on it, opening it. As the chest opened, dazzling light spilled out, and a glowing orb appeared. Ding! Congratulations, Master, you have opened a platinum chest and obtained Source of Machinery. Source of Machinery, an item for the Ex Machina race. Once absorbed, it grants them data consciousness equivalent to a human. At the same time, it triggers evolution and greatly improves their functions. Talk about a timely gift. Riku muttered, the corners of his mouth lifting. Platinum chests and above should, in theory, always contain what he needed. Still, he hadn't expected this. With this, Shui's abilities would be greatly enhanced. She could probably take command of the entire Ex Machina network with ease. Now, where to next? Riku stored the Source of Machinery in his system inventory, then opened a system map to check the locations of the remaining chests. There were 2 platinum chests left, one on the moon and another in the ocean, the main nest of the siren. As for diamond chests, there were still 2, one in the Demon King's lair, which, judging from the huge red marker, had to be extremely dangerous, the other in the giant tribe's settlement. As for the Ex Machina, there were no chests in their territory, since their movements were unpredictable. The moon will have to wait. Siren and giants, huh? Forget it, I'll head for the giants first, Riku decided. He was drooling over the diamond chest, after all. With his decision made, Riku bade farewell to the dwarves, who saw him off with great respect. Lord Riku, did everything go smoothly with the dwarves? As Riku appeared on her back, Zorlis asked. Yeah, I just put them to work a bit, Riku said calmly. They know their place, didn't make any demands and agreed to everything right away. I see. Zorlis sounded a little disappointed. Those guys are never this obedient, I was hoping for a chance to teach them a lesson. Looks like I'll have to wait. Alright, stop fussing. Next stop the giants, Riku said with a roll of his eyes. With that, Zorlis changed direction and sped off toward the high mountains. Meanwhile, on Shui's side. Why won't you believe me? If it's Riku, I'm sure he can. Shui stared helplessly at the male Ex Machina in front of her, the current overconnect command unit of the Ex Machina. Reply, you are thoroughly broken and are no longer qualified to return to the network. Reminder, reintegrating would only introduce numerous errors and viruses. Suggestion, UC 207PR4F5079, self-termination is optimal, the command unit replied in an utterly emotionless tone. Shui stared blankly at her former comrades, her former leader, her mouth opening and closing, then collapsed to the ground, eyes lifeless. What should she do? She couldn't accept this result. Her memories with Riku were the most important things to her. She couldn't bear to share them with the entire network. She didn't want to share Riku with the rest. What should I do, Riku? Shui murmured, clutching her stuffed animal and staring up at the dark, blood-red sky, dejected. Lord Riku, we've arrived. Up ahead is the land of the Gigants. Looks like those big guys have already noticed us, Zorlis announced, having flown into a towering mountain forest. Endless mountain ranges, under normal circumstances, anyone would marvel at their magnificence. Yet these peaks, awe-inspiring to any human, were now overshadowed by towering, colossal figures. Their mere presence shook the hearts of any race. Fifth in the racial hierarchy, the Gigant. Their bodies themselves were their greatest weapons. Even a Dragonia, if struck directly by a Gigant, would be in for a world of hurt. Looks like it, Riku said, standing atop Zorlis's head, his white hair fluttering in the wind, expression calm. Lord Riku, the Gigant have quite the temper. If you're trying to get them to join the alliance, it's going to be tough, Zorlis said, continuing to fly steadily forward despite the Gigant's furious, sharp gazes. Did I ever say I wanted to bring the Gigant into the alliance? Riku tilted his head, sounding casual. Eh? Didn't you? Then why are we here? Zerlis asked, confused. If I told you I was just here for sightseeing, would you believe me? Riku replied with a grin. Yeah, right. Lord Riku, don't tell me you're here treasure hunting again. Zerlis rolled her eyes, curiosity piqued. Correct. But no reward for now, Riku answered with a faint smile. Dragonia, are you here to start a fight? Coming here alone, you sure look down on us. A massive gigant stepped forward, exuding a fierce presence, and roared. His voice was like thunder, shaking the air and scattering the black ash. It whipped around in a storm. Humphrey, and what if I do look down on you? Zerlis shot back, displeased. She'd intended to start off friendly, but since they were being rude, she wouldn't hold back. If you know what's good for you, get out of our way. Otherwise, Lord Riku will beat all you big lugs to a pulp, Zerlis said coldly. Riku could only laugh wryly at this. When did Zerlis start acting like this? Lord Riku. At this, the gigant finally noticed the figure standing on Zerlis's head. A monkey? Since when did Dragonia become so pathetic, letting a monkey ride on your head and calling him Lord to boot? The Gigant King sneered, instantly turning the mood sour. The Gigant and Dragonia had always had a bad relationship. Every meeting turned into a brawl. Now, being called out like this, the Gigant's rage boiled over. Lord Riku, told you these guys have a terrible temper, Zerlis said to Riku. Guess I've seen it for myself. Want to handle them? I can let you have a turn, Riku said nonchalantly. Maybe not. Zerlis quickly backed out. She might be annoyed, but facing off against a whole tribe of gigants was a surefire way to get pounded to death. Damn Dragonia, don't get cocky. The gigant, seeing themselves ignored, exploded in fury. Yet, even then, they barely acknowledged the presence of Riku, the human. The gigant, for all their immense bodies and freakish constitution, didn't have the keen senses of the wary beast, the speed of the flugel, the perception of the elves, or the technological detection of the dwarves, so they had no way to gauge Riku's power. What the gigant possessed was pure, overwhelming power. At that moment, one of the gigants, unable to hold back his rage, stepped forward and threw a punch at Zerlis. The air was squeezed into a vacuum, the pressure beneath the fist enough to crush a person instantly. The gusting wind howled in agony, as if being torn apart. So reckless. That's not good, Riku commented coolly. Boosted gear. In an instant, Riku's right arm was covered by the Red Dragon Emperor's gauntlet. His entire body was enveloped in crimson light, and a magnificent red armor wrapped around him as his aura erupted. This surge of power was something even the gigant could sense instantly. They all stared at Riku in disbelief.